6'7".
6'7".
Yeah. Oh wait, he's 6'7".
That's crazy.
I
don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like a big geography guy. It could be so fun and so yee, and then all of a sudden it can be like, man, this is just awful, and it's just the worst feeling in the world.
Welcome into Overtime, presented by Perfection One. My name is John Bruce, alongside with Shayne Combs, and it is episode 99 of Southern Ohio Sports Authority's Overtime podcast. As always, presented by Perfection One. I'm struggling to talk early in the episode, so this could be.
So say you got to hang in there here for a couple hours.
Yeah, this is going to be probably another short one as usual, but as always, in the description below will be the timestamps for when each and every single thing that we talk about is throughout the episode. So if you want to skip ahead, you can do so there. We'd love it if you watched all hour and 30 to 2 hours and 15 minutes, however long this ends up going. We'd appreciate you watching all of us, but you got a lot of different things to do. So we understand and appreciate you just tuning in at all, because there's a lot of different things going on in the spring. How was your weekend, Shayne?
It was really good, and I want to start by saying I appreciate the feedback. It's so cool to go out to games and to different things and to have people stop you and talk to you about things. Had awesome discussion, probably 3 or 4 different times on both a baseball and softball example of the where we were talking about errors last week and scoring decisions and how it's tough, because at the high school level, a coach and you might think your kid should make the play, and I get it, I've been there, but at the same time, now that I step back and look at it objectively as a scorekeeper, sometimes it's maybe not as routine as we think. Especially when you start talking about infielders moving a step or two left or right, certain arm strength and throws, and just simply beating out a throw across the diamond, pop-ups that go up in the air that maybe you think should have been caught or fall in or what. There's a lot of things that go in. So again, 2 things can be true sometimes. As a coach, I might mark mentally in my notebook that our defense has to be better, but that doesn't necessarily mean statistically it's an error.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this. Seeing different levels out at the VA, you see, we don't typically see JV. We've seen a couple JV games out there over the last couple of years, but we don't typically see JV, but we see varsity baseball. We see kind of different levels of varsity baseball as well, because when we have that Prep Baseball Ohio, when they come in, we had some of the top teams in the state in Division I playing. And then you see some college levels. You see NAIA, which is coming up this weekend out at the VA. The next week will be a Division III, which is going to feature the #1 team in the country. And then you also see middle school. We saw some travel ball this weekend, which probably would be 7th or 8th grade. But man, they played some really high level defense. We've seen some different. So it can be kind of hard when we're sitting out there watching those games like, well, we saw a kid make that play the other day. Well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that play should always be made regardless of that level. And like I've said, going back to the kind of joking around about the Division III tournament that we got coming up there in a couple of weeks, like when literally everything's a hit, nothing's an error. That part can be kind of frustrating, but at the same time, scorekeeping can be very difficult regardless of the level. Now, I do think stolen bases, those do need looked at. Some people are kind of aggressive on the defensive indifference, like, hey, we didn't make a throw. Well, it's the top of the first, and it's just a 1st and 3rd situation, and you're just not making a throw. That doesn't mean it's defensive indifference. That rule was really put in for later in the games, as opposed to just, hey, we're indifferent early because we got a strikeout pitcher and they're trying to kind of bait us into a rundown to try to score a run.
Everything you said, I just kind of shake my head along, because I've been in those discussions for a long, long time, and I don't know if I have the absolute perfect solution. You try to be consistent. You try to do a good job. I think we can work together on it now and get different opinions just to try to get them as accurate as we can, because I understand that stuff's important. But at the same time, I know from a coaching perspective and a scorekeeping perspective, you can sometimes both be right in what you're saying.
Yeah, so we kind of punted a discussion for last week to this week, but that's going to be kind of tie in with that. But I want to talk a little bit about what we have coming up this week anyway. Now, if you noticed, on Sunday night, we didn't actually have the Hinsdale Healthcare Coaches Call-In show that we thought we were going to have. Our producer for that show, Christian Spradlin, went down with an illness that apparently his entire family had gotten, and he just had not. So sometimes you just can't, do much on that. So hopefully he's back and good, and we'll have another episode of that this coming week. That next week's episode will actually be going to the 17th, which will be after Mother's Day, because we will not be filming live on Mother's Day. We may do our show on Mother's Day. We'll see. We haven't talked yet on that. That's still a couple weeks away, but we'll have at least 2 more episodes of the Hinsdale Healthcare Coaches Call-In show. We will actually have our first ever softball live stream, which will be on Monday night at VA Memorial Stadium. Chillicothe will be hosting Jackson. The winner will get a share of the FAC, as both are undefeated in FAC play. You and Christian, not Christian, I was talking about Christian earlier. You and Carson Francis will have the call on that.
Yeah, real excited to do that, studying those 2 teams this weekend to get ready for that. And we'll talk more about it in our softball segment later on. And we'll break down Chillicothe and Jackson, but those 2 lineups are really good. 2 really good pitchers in the circle. Excited to talk about that here this evening, and then get a chance to call that on Monday night, depending on when you're watching this. It may be still coming up, maybe already has happened, but nonetheless, you'll be able to see it right here on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, and if you missed it, just remember that all of our games are still in the YouTube archives, which we've done a lot of different games so far this spring. We've done over 100 different live streams on the school year. I believe it's at 101 now, 101 different live streams. So we appreciate all of our live stream sponsors as we continue to add onto that number. That's a record for us, as I think we were at 97 last year. So looking forward to seeing what we can get to on that. That's only made possible through all of our sponsors. Ohio Health included in that. Hinsdale Healthcare is one of those big sponsors as well, and you'll see those sponsors throughout the game on our ticker and everything. And then Tuesday we'll actually have our last regular season live stream, because of all the different things that are going on at VA Memorial Stadium for the next 3 weeks. Our last regular season live stream, which will be Waverly and McLean on Tuesday night. You and Kenneth Hay will have the call on that one. Looking forward to another really good last regular season game of the season at VA Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, we've had some really good matchups. I know some of the final scores have been deceiving, because even some of those scores that got away were really, really good baseball games through 4 innings or so. And then the other night, I would say, has probably been by far our best start to finish game. That Chillicothe Peebles baseball game was outstanding. If you haven't had a chance to see that, I'd recommend at least going back and watching the last 3 innings or so. It got really, really exciting there. Great pitching on both sides. From the Johnson kid from Peebles and Brown from Chillicothe. They were terrific. We'll talk a little bit more about those baseball teams and their respective conference breakdowns as well on this show. But yeah, I'm looking forward to another great week, and then some more shows. We get ready for this tournament trail, which I know will get really busy, and hopefully get a chance to bring as much action as possible from the VA there.
Yeah, then one more thing. Our Raymond Gladel's done a great job of getting to some track meets so far this year, so we have a lot more track coverage than I think we've ever had so far, has been from his, as league meets are starting to get closer and closer.
Well, when you get the league in postseason, I mean, I say this sarcastically, but I think track people agree. It's like everyone will start trying.
Yes.
I mean, like right now, it's like, hey, how'd it go? Well, we didn't really run our people, or why'd you go?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm learning myself there, but no, in all seriousness, you come up on that. I know they start hitting their peaks. They start recognizing their elite athletes, how they want to use them, and that's when it gets really good.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things, is how long the preseason in track really is, because it's pretty much all the way up until the conference meets for almost everyone.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it a really interesting thing. And really doing the spring show, and then talking to a couple more track coaches this year than really ever before, I'm starting to learn a little bit more and more, and always respect those athletes a great deal. But also, man, those coaches are doing a lot of prep to try to figure out the best way to help their team as well as they're trying to score as many points as possible.
No question. Just like every other sport, technology has increased, and it's given them a lot more data to go off of.
Yeah, and then speaking of like kind of data, and this kind of goes back to that discussion that we had punted to this week. It was, talked about, it was defensive positioning and pre-pitch movement. And that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about last week, but we went pretty long. And then when we talk about the hitter and air, I feel like that can be included in this on the defensive positioning, pre-pitch movement. When you were scouting, and I know some people will not put out stats because they don't want to get scouted and everything. We had a player when I was in school named Nate Carver. He was all Ohio. He was 6'4", about 275. Probably is about 230 now. Just he did a great job of really getting himself in great shape after. And he was this big, strong kid. And he hit 500, and I don't know how many balls he pulled. But you would have thought he was a big-time pull hitter. So positioning-wise, if you just looked at his stats, you wouldn't have known what to do with him because he's just flaring balls, just shooting balls to the left. And if, that a lot of that, when people talk about scouting, well, if you went and watched us, you would know where he hit the ball. But if you just looked at numbers and you see his size and build, you're like, oh, man, this dude, we gotta get back against the fence. He's just flare. And, but if you're really doing your proper scouting, your defensive positioning could help take that away in a big way. Just how valuable did you see defensive positioning, pre-pitch movement, those things, when it came to getting your teams ready to play?
Well, you always tried to find every advantage you could. I would try to spend a ton of time in the preseason and into that opening week getting out on every night off and seeing some people, charting some at bats, and then you chart your own at bats against them. And sometimes I know kids change year to year, but you try to keep maybe last year's stats just to see how kids, to see if there any, because you just don't have as much to go off of, right? Like now, that's where you do have to be careful with like Game Changer and some of those things out there. If you let too much access go, people can get your spray charts and all sorts of things, and then that does kind of start to matter. But as far as our own team, I think that you have to understand that you don't have a whole lot of time. Back in the day, we would start with 2 weeks of pitchers and catchers. Since then, here in recent years, that's become just normal baseball practice now. I loved your conversation on the call-in show last week about the catchers calling the game and letting them go. Never really was a big guy to call pitches. I might have called 3-4 pitches a game where, I'd always be able to get my catcher's attention, signal something in or whatever if I would see something. But honestly, I prided in teaching the catcher how to play the game. Yeah, the catcher was a really, really important. I've been blessed to coach some really, really good ones. And you spend all that time in your bullpens and talking to them, get to know your pitcher. What is it we're trying to do? How are we trying to set up this pitch and go to where they start to call? Then as far as the defense goes, on the most basic level, you start at your straight up, and you've got a little bit of a pull or you got a little bit of a backside hit, and then the better your team is, the more experienced your team is, because keep in mind, you don't have a ton of time, you don't have a ton of practice leading up. You do start to get a little bit more advanced as they get advanced. You can start to move on counts. You could start to then eventually signal pitches all over the diamond. To the point where they know, okay, we're getting ready to throw a curveball here, the outside corner, infield's going to creep step glove side. You see what I'm saying? And we're gonna get to that point. If you don't know exactly what I mean, I guess an analogy would be like in basketball. The most basic level in man-to-man defense is the ball leaves the middle of the court, you're going to get to the midline. Well, then if you have to help, you're going to help the helper. And every step gets more advanced, right? I know there's been times where I'm coaching young kids at the varsity level, and we'll do a good job getting midline. We'll do a good job helping. We'll have a good time rotating or whatever. But then the offense may end up running a certain action, especially in the preseason or early in the year, and I almost just have to bite my tongue and be like, we're not quite there yet. You know what I mean? And then we'll go to the film on that, and we'll get better and better. Baseball's no different. I mean, there's a lot of guys, the more experienced you are, you come back later in that year, especially in year two, and all of a sudden, if you're experienced at catcher, experienced at shortstop, experience in center field, now all of a sudden you can do whatever you want. You see what I'm saying? You can start to move people on every pitch, and you can start to do a lot of things. But at the same time, I felt like it was important for me to teach them how to do it. And then as they started to take ownership, the game would have better flow. And I found they started to enjoy the game more.
Yeah, and it's one of those, it can be really difficult if you don't have that experience. I know I watched a team a few years ago at the state tournament, as NDCL, from up around, I believe around the Cleveland area, and their shortstop on every pitch is just moving like crazy. Yeah. And honestly, it was probably kind of distracting for the batter because, but he was seeing the sign and he's lining up based on if it's off speed or a fastball. And that was one of the things Coach Taylor tried to talk to us early on, was signaling to the outfield. And then I think we kind of went away from it a little bit. Now, I also played a lot of third base, so I wasn't seeing a ton of it. But it was really fun whenever you could kind of identify when things were coming. I know we had playing Westfall, and he says, hey, take a step to the line, be ready. And I think it's like first and second, and immediately next pitch, ground ball to me, go 5-4-3 double play. And I was just, he's like, you see that? I was like, and we talked about it a little bit more of like, because he was calling pitches at the time. And I think my calling pitches the first year, I think I did it my first game, and it was just atrocious. And then after that, it was talk to the catcher a good bit beforehand. And then later on, where I had a pitcher who, had a really nice breaking ball, but they kind of would try to overuse it a little bit too much. So then I would take a little bit more control, and then later in the game would just kind of be like, you got this inning, we'll see how it goes. Just look every once in a while. And then you could go almost dummy calls as well, because if maybe they start to pick it up a little bit. Or when I had a catcher who hadn't caught since he was 12, that was just going back there because the other catcher also pitched. So it's like, hey coach, I'll go do this. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to call these ones. But one of the things I really liked was, for me, I was a lot of defensive coaching, which was adjusting guys pre-pitch, and that was trying to get the outfield in the best possible position. But a lot of it would be, hey, we're facing a righty, our guy, throws pretty hard, so you're going to pinch in a little bit. A righty's up, we're going to pinch a little bit in right field, or a lefty, we're going to pinch a little bit in left field. But if we're throwing breaking balls, maybe we're not pinching as much. And it's just, just overall, I do think there's a lot of value in it, but also, as you said, there's not a whole lot of time to get prepped for it.
Yeah, one of the favorite things I used to do is, in summer camp, I'd always have a classroom session for about a half hour each day, and we would go in and we would practice keeping score, talking about scoring decisions and different things. We'd practice keeping score, and we'd learn a lot of the things in terms that go in, and then we'd talk about defense, and we'd talk about, okay, they're 4-hole hitters up, it's 2-0, we call fastball, there's a pretty good chance they're going to be swinging out of their shoes, pulling the base. So it's one of those things where we're trying to just teach the game. And as the career goes on, it does get harder and harder with some teams to do that, because you might have a bunch of 3-sport athletes. Maybe not as many kids come to the camps in the summer. Maybe not as many, because baseball, in terms of where it's ranking, say with football, but it's just the reality of what it is. So, but you're right. I tried to really. I love the IQ part of the game, and the more you could get kids to really think the game, watch the game, it certainly benefits the way they played. And the teams that I was able to really reach in that aspect were some of my very, very best teams. And I'll be honest, other times as a coach, I just never did get a couple teams to advance. And man, it showed up, not that we were always bad at the defensive plays. We probably just cheated ourselves at a chance to make some more defensive plays. The other thing I would throw in there, John, is the importance of pitchers hitting their spots. Like when you do all of this and you're calling, or they're calling a pitch and you're moving accordingly, well, if you expect the curveball to be on the outer half or off the outside corner, and all of a sudden it hangs over the front half, then that becomes even a pitcher's fault too. And you could teach them that, like, okay, you've got to benefit by hitting your spots and so forth. So good baseball IQ discussion all the way around there.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. So let's move to another part of coaching. And this goes into a little bit of coaching your team during the game and making player personnel changes throughout the game and how it goes against different sports. So just how difficult is it if you've got 13 players? Now we're not always about like making sure everyone gets into the game, but if you have 13 players, just coaching a game when it comes to making those in-game personnel changes and adjustments.
It's tough. I think it's more difficult on baseball and softball coaches than anybody. And here's why I say that. The rules are just different. Okay. It's part of the job, right? It's our job to pick our lineup and put our lineup out there that we think is the best possible lineup that gives us a chance to be successful. But just think about it. In football, you've got people moving in on every down. Okay, it's a passing down. We're going to bring in some extra fresh defensive linemen, rush to passer. Offense is running 2-3 wide receivers in with the plays on every play. Now all of a sudden, maybe over the course of a series, even though 11's on the field at a time, maybe you're playing up to 15 to 17 different kids. Baseball, softball just doesn't work that way a lot of times. You put a kid in the run, you take them out, they're done. I mean, it's not like in basketball. I can take a rotation of 8 and move you in and out, or in volleyball, you'll just see them sub themselves, right? They're in a rotation. All the way across the board, the substitution rules of in and out, in and out, in and out allow more kids to play. Where in baseball, softball, if I'm being honest, it's just not quite the same in terms of the way kids are on a particular part of a lineup card, and it's much harder to get kids in and out. And then obviously with softball and baseball, the JV and varsity playing opposite, it's even hard to choose sometimes between using them in a JV lineup versus a varsity bench role.
Yeah, that's kind of where I had mentioned the designated survivor the other day.
Yeah.
Like because if you put a player in the second inning and they're done. Or they have to stay in the game and then maybe re-enter later because you do have the re-entry rule in baseball, softball, and that has been a really good place where you can use those players. But I saw a team a few days ago out at the stadium where they used a pinch runner in the second inning. Well, that pinch runner was done for the day, and then another team, and I know I wasn't big on the courtesy runner, but usually because my catchers were one of my better athletes. But I saw a team use a courtesy runner. He scored 5 times in the game. Like, one of the times was as a pinch runner later in the game. So he never officially went into the game, but he just kept running. Like, the catcher just kept getting on, and that kid just kept scoring. So or it may have been 4 times. Either way, he just kept scoring. And I was just like, all right, well, good for him. Like, he did his job. And it's, when you have certain spots and jobs on a team, but you can really take value in that. But at the same time, how big is, when you had to make that decision of like, hey, we're going to have to run for this spot in the order, but we can only do it once. So we really have to take advantage of it. Well, what happens if later in the game, you maybe misjudged when that was, or you waited till later in the game and that the player doesn't get back on, and you missed an opportunity early in the game as well. So that's something to think about as well.
No question. I watched a game the other day where a kid gets on, coach does not use the runner, and I understood why, because it was only like the 4th inning. I could say, okay, I can kind of follow. It's a close game, maybe. Then all of a sudden there was a pass ball that young man moved up to second and he made the sub. Well, now he's hoping for a base hit to score. Well, unfortunately, the kid goes out to run. They end up straight into third base, but I at least understood where the coach was coming from, right? So it's one of those things that's really, really hard. Next inning, they put that kid back in to play defense. That kid's done. Right. I mean, so that's my point about how the rules and the overall structure of the game make it really tough to get more and more kids involved.
Yeah, and it's a sport where we want to try to keep kids interested and into the game. Well, sometimes early in the season, finding your role even if your role ends up, I mean, Beaver Creek had a kid who's literal, I think his position was barker, like chirper probably is be more, and he was like, I would put him on the top, like in the top 3 of kids, like as far as like just talking nonstop that we've had at the stadium in the last like 3 years, and he ain't number 2 or 3. Like he was the best. Like it upset people. And I don't think he said a negative thing towards the other team, but it was just constant. Never went into the game. Like he just didn't play. Like he rode the bus, but he knew that was his role. Where, like the player that I said, scored the 4 times the other day, his role was to go into the game and use his legs. But early in the season, maybe people don't know that that's going to be their role, and you're trying to find roles. And as a coach, you're trying to keep people locked in throughout the season, where maybe later in the season, even if you're not going to play, you had your chances early in the season, and that's part of the kind of difficulty of these in-game situations as well.
The only other thing I had down on my notes to throw in is sometimes different programs are in different spots. We talked about this before. You play 27 of these games. You might only be in a conference where you play 10 or 14 or maybe 16. That's not as common anymore to have that many. Yeah. But it's a situation where some people be like, well, how about giving them some time in the non-league or whatever? Sometimes you give them time in the league because the non-league might be the game you can win. You see what I'm saying? Like if you're trying to rack up wins for your tournament draw or whatnot. So there's so much that goes into it. And then obviously the pitching and the catching play a role in it. But when you put someone in the lineup, you take someone out. So you're costing somebody at bats that, you obviously look at as some of your best players. So sometimes sometimes the best within competition comes when you know who your top 6 players are, maybe 7 or 8 some years, but then you have 5 or 6 kids that can kind of compete for that other spot. The downside of that is it's hard to get in a rhythm if you're only getting about 3 at-bats a week.
Yeah, that was, 2 of the 2 times I was on a coaching staff that made it to a regional. We had 11 different players on each one, and it was you might have started the regional semifinal, but you're not going to play the regional final because it's that person's turn, and you just had people switching on and off. Or this person was a personal catcher for this pitcher. Well, they played shortstop the next game, and it was just sometimes. And then also on that team, we had someone that DH'd when that personal catcher caught. Well, then they had to play somewhere in the field. Otherwise, or maybe they didn't play. And, you have those situations. And then also, at this time of year, sometimes you find some players because somebody's got to take a night off because you got prom.
See, yeah, you did it on purpose.
Yes.
So, are we really talking about this?
Yeah,
or are you just trying to bait me
let's
into
talk
it?
about it.
Listen, when I first started, prom was fine. Keep in mind, you only have about 6 weeks of baseball, maybe 7. So you used not to be able to start on the first weekend. So you had to play 4 double headers because you're allowed to play 27 games, but you had to play them on 23 dates. So your Saturdays were huge. And then they loosened up a little bit. They said, okay, you can play 27 games on 27 days. So early on in my career, prom was fine. I think prom's awesome. Kids should go have a good time, be safe, have an awesome time. A lot of young ladies don't want to play on prom. I totally understand that. They use the day or whatever. Back in the day, you could get boys to play until late afternoon, then they'd be done, they go to prom. As time's gone on, I'm telling you, this thing has become like royalty, like calendar, like you're a complete idiot if you schedule anything within 72 hours before prom, because like it's become a, coach, I'm not only going to my prom, but I'm going to like this prom, and then I'm going to this other prom, and then we're going out for dinner on this night, but we're going up in Columbus, so I got to go here, and then, hey, I need to leave practice here because I got to get my tux, and then, we're going out to dinner. Well, I can't play on Saturday because I'm going to prom. Well, I thought prom was at night. Well, it is, but we're having pictures like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because we've got this beautiful waterfall up at such and such thing, or down at the park, or on the courthouse, and I'm thinking, what are we doing? Like, it's it's just a spring sport thing. You know what I'm saying? Like a football coach would never have to mess with this. A volleyball coach wouldn't have to mess with this. It's just like, so I appreciate you letting me talk about it. And now I'm good.
But hold on, I got more. Oh. So you also mentioned, you got 6 weeks for, now I feel like you have more time as well, but those other sports also have way more time and they don't have to deal with any of that stuff. So I do know when I was a junior, we had a doubleheader with Greenfield McLean. We blew a 7-0 lead in the first game and we lost in extras. Then we were down 11-2 and won 12-11 in the second game. I didn't get home until like 6, so then I just got ready, went to my date's house. We took 15 minutes of pictures and took off. And then the next year,
now see, if it was 2026, you'd have just completely ruined her experience. It would just you'd have been awful.
Yeah. Well, she ruined my experiences. All right. So
we probably should go.
No, we won't go too far in that. But the next year, but also softball had a doubleheader that day. Now,
really,
the varsity girls or the girls that were going to prom played the first game.
Okay.
They did not play the second game. So then they got ready and did their whatever. The next year, we're playing down at Waverly in soccer in the fall. Our best goal scorer goes out of the game and is furious that he can't leave early because he's got to go get ready for homecoming. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what's going on? The year before, I took my date because we both did sports and she cheered and, everything. We went to our homecoming meal at like noon that day. Then she went home, got ready, and I just went and picked her up again later. And my buddy was just like, why aren't we getting on the bus? Let's go. I got to go. I'm like, dude, we're all going to the same thing. And like, we're taking pictures at your house. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But just overall, I actually almost put out something the other day. Like, I was just like, man, we had 27 dates or 23 dates when we could play. My senior year, we played a league game at 11 at Adena. Drove over to Unioto and played Washington Courthouse in a game at like 2:30, and then I still had time to go home, get dressed, and go get ready for prom. Now, like you said, nobody plays on prom. People aren't playing on the weekend anyway. I know we talked to one coach, I think it was Green's coach, Coach Shoop, said they don't do anything on the weekend. The weekend's for the players, which is fantastic. You have more time to play now, so you have those dates. But when I looked at our schedule on the Norfolk Animal Clinic scoreboard the other day, I'm like, there's like 10 total games played. I spit on the table too. Like, there's no games being played on Saturday. So on the rare time we had a day off, I hadn't had a day off from Easter until Saturday. I was like, oh, maybe I'll go out and watch a game. Didn't have a chance because there's just not very many games being played on Saturday, and it's I just feel like our scheduling has gotten kind of crazy as well. Like, doubleheaders are pretty much a thing of the past, and I know some schools are doing the varsity then JV, which I think is great because then you get a chance to maybe watch those JV kids that you don't get to see all year. But what's your thoughts on kind of, because I'm going to put this as prom and scheduling. That way it's not just you ranting about prom. But what's your thoughts on kind of the double headers going away as well?
In baseball, I think it's got to be a lot of the pitch count. It has to be, because like I said, you had no choice before to play 4 of them or you wouldn't get your 27 games in. And everyone wanted to maximize their games. So that's the number one reason they've gone away is because of that rule change. The number 2 thing, another rule change, has to be the pitch count. You obviously, you get to the weekend and you struggle, especially in leagues that if you're playing like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and then you're trying to doubleheader or play on Saturday. I think that has to do a lot of it. I just look at it as a lot of times, if you're good enough year in, year out to compete in your league's race, I guess I get it. I think a lot of times, though, man, that non-league schedule goes a long way in determining a lot of what you're going to feel about your year in baseball and softball and how you play. And what I always said, I didn't care. Some years I didn't care if an SVC game got rained out because I knew my AD would make us play that. I worried about the sun shining, 75 and beautiful on Saturday, and we can't play at 11 o'clock in the morning because we have prom like in 9 hours. You know what I'm saying? So like that was just that was something that, started to play a role in that. But in all seriousness, why do people not play now on Saturday? Because they played on Saturdays earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Why do they not play now? You're not even going to mess with it. Like, it's one of those things where like right now, there's people listening to me talk saying, that guy's an idiot. He doesn't even like kids. He doesn't want them to go to prom. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I want to try to have a schedule throughout the year, and we only have such a window to play. Think about it. We get tournament time coming up and so forth, and you want to get as many of those games in for your kids. And I'm telling you, it's tough when you give away Saturdays. And it's one thing to give away your own prom, but if you have 5 starters who date kids from other schools, they need the Friday night and all day Saturday on their prom as well.
Well, we want every prom to be on a beautiful night, so we want those Saturdays to be beautiful days. So we want them to
They're offended that they have to play on Friday night because they go to dinner there now on Friday night now.
You know the craziest thing? Back in I guess technically when I went, we had cell phones the first year as well, but you would just call someone and say, hey, we both have this Thursday off. Let's go eat then. But prom's not for another 10 days. 9 days, whatever. Yeah, you can go before. Like, you don't have to go. Like, I know there's some players at the school, they went on a Thursday where they didn't have a game. They didn't have a game scheduled, so they went to prom dinner. Great. That's a good job. You didn't have to go on Friday. Like, you didn't have to go the night before. You can plan it out and still have your games and still be as focused as possible. But yeah, I mean,
and in all seriousness, I get that spring is last. So what's happened is a lot of these young men and a lot of young women, if they're 3-sport athletes, which is what we want, they might say, look, I had football practice after school every day, and then I had basketball every day. I had it on Saturdays. I don't have any days off. I've got to get something here in the spring, maybe in the preseason. I've got to go get this done. I got to get. Look, there's a lot of moving parts to it. So I know we're joking here a little bit, but I'm not joking about the fact that prom plays a big factor in spring scheduling for baseball and softball coaches.
Yes, it does in a major way, and we do hope that the kids have a great time and all that. But it is a night activity, so I think there's probably a lot of coaches that do agree with that. Whole rant that went on for almost 10 minutes. So let's move over to baseball. So
sorry.
No, I don't care. Let's go to baseball, and let's start with one of the most impressive things that we had happen in our area all season. West Union's Thomas Barnhart not only hit for the cycle, but he threw a no-hitter on the same game. It was a 17-0 win for the Dragons over Ripley. I'm still not done, by the way. He struck out 15. It was 5 innings. Didn't walk a batter. Didn't hit a batter. So 15 strikeouts. Only faces 15, gets 15 outs. 1 ball was put in play, and they booted it. But he threw 48 strikes out of the 57 pitches he threw. So I'm going to do some math on this. 84% strikes on the day. Hits for the cycle, just all of that overall. Nate Foose was his catcher also, so shout out to him doing obviously a really good job. He ended up, there's a couple balls in the dirt where he was able to throw a couple players out at first to get those out, so there were a couple technical chances beyond. But just, have you ever heard of a display like that?
Well, no, not the combination of everything you just did. It's an unbelievable win. And, you're talking about that being their first win. A lot of times when you're a program in that situation, you always say, look, I know there's a lot of pressure on those kids, but you need your very best players to step up and play their very best if we're going to have a chance. And this young man able to do it on the mound and at the plate, and no, that's phenomenal. That's one for the record books there for sure.
Yeah, and it's one of those where I've seen some different schools have the baseball framed and stuff in their trophy case. You're gonna have to have a bunch of them, because you're not gonna be able to put all of those different things on the same baseball that can be displayed properly. It's gonna have to have a 360 where people can walk around and just be like, "Oh, he did that. Oh, wait, there's more. Oh, there's even more." Yeah. The only thing that I was hoping for was that it went in order on the cycle, because he hit the home run last. I think he hit the triple third, but I think it was single and double were flipped. But just unbelievable display from Thomas Barnhart. So congratulations to him and the Dragons to get that first win. But let's stay within the SHAC. And things got pretty interesting because Fairfield's Ben Miller was lights out as the Lions upset White Oak on Thursday with a 4-1 win. The senior southpaw struck out 10, did not allow an earned run in 6 innings. Anderson Humphreys came in and threw a perfect 7th inning to get the save. A huge win for Fairfield, who's having a pretty down year, but a pretty special win for them.
Again, lineups in the SHAC a little bit down from graduation. We've talked about that. I think it's fair. On the one side, Lynchburg's kind of setting the pace. North Adams having an okay year. Yeah. But what's made the other half so competitive is some of these teams that we've been used to seeing at the top have come back to the pack. I think it's safe to say White Oak and Fairfield be 2 of those in terms of what they've been in the past. But it's opened the door for some other teams to kind of beat up on each other, and it's made for a really fun conference there, or division, I should say, to follow. We just had the White Oak team the other night, and they're no seniors, if I remember correctly.
No seniors.
They're young. They have a couple of nice left-handed arms, and in terms of Clift, and we saw Airy the other night. I thought he threw the ball terrific. They're well coached. I really like the shortstop there, the young kid Lucas Pollard.
Yes.
He was a good player. I think he's going to be a really good one. But when you break it down, there's a lot of stress put on like the leadoff hitter like Flater and so forth, because if you can get certain people out, you can really get their lineup under control. And I think that's what Fairfield was able to do in that particular game. And you see some of those lower scoring games where it just takes one mistake here or there to flip the score, and that's what happened there.
Yeah, and that's as we said, this is a Fairfield team that hasn't had the season I think that they're kind of used to.
Right.
They have 3 kids that are starters on at really solid programs right now that could be at Fairfield right now, and I think that's impacted their team in a big way. Cameron Miller, who I was impressed with when they were a couple different times that they're out at the VA. On that night, he was 3 for 3, scored a couple runs, had an RBI for them as well. Ben Miller also added 2 hits and scored a run on the other side. Caleb Bryce, who's got some really good wheels. We said his name a lot in the winter as a big-time member of that basketball program. He was 1 for 3 with a run scored in that game as well. Isaiah Clift was the losing pitcher in that. That was the first game on the season in which he has given up an earned run. Only gave up 2 earned runs in that game. He has a 0.49 ERA or 4.4 ERA on the season. He's been outstanding for them. He is 3-2, but those were the only 2 earned runs he's given up on the year. So don't sleep on this White Oak team. But things have gotten pretty interesting because Peebles, speaking of a young team, they do have 2 seniors that start for them. But I was really impressed with what we saw on Friday night in their win over Chillicothe, but also they were able to knock off North Adams and beat them 2-1 on Thursday night as well. In that game, Colin Symmes and Nash Grooms, the only 2 seniors, each had an RBI in that game. It's for Peebles. It's you think basketball with Peebles. They've been really good at soccer lately as well. But based off what we saw, I think baseball is going to be a sport where you're going to hear a lot more about them here in the next few years.
Yeah, calling their game the other night, they're a young team, but a lot of their youth is advanced. I mean, you talked about Symmes and Grooms. I think that's really important with their athleticism. But I think speed and athleticism were the 2 things that jumped out at me compared to a lot of the Peebles teams I've coached against over the years. That's the first thing that jumped out at me in the first 2 or 3 innings on the base passes and defensively. It's like, wow, this team's way more athletic than what sometimes they get out for in baseball. And the sophomore, Bo Johnson, the freshman Caleb Johnson combined in the pitching, the freshman backstop there, Crew Wilson was really, really good on both sides of the ball.
He was 3 for 3 at the plate.
He was and caught a really good game, made a nice play to end the game. But, listen, defensively, I thought their defense stepped up and made some plays. I was impressed with their outfield in that ballpark. Connor Gross in left made a play going to the line one time, going toward the gap another. Obviously Hurley Schutte and right, and then the big time play from Braylon Stevenson. I know that we put out on our social there. He too a freshman, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, he comes up and I'll be honest, caught me off guard. I thought it was a base hit. It was going to be a run scored. And all of a sudden I look up and here comes this, perfect one-hop throw to Wilson at the plate to gun down the runner. And that was a big-time high school play. But, look, they're young. I mean, I know I'll miss somebody. Sophomore Symmes, they're at short, and even over at third, there was a freshman, the Smith kid. But, I mean, they all throughout the evening made some different plays and got involved and beat a pretty solid Chillicothe team there. I know playing a bigger school, that had to, non-league or not, that had to be it felt pretty good, big win for the program, I'm sure. And they're a factor in the SHAC a little bit more than they have been, and some bright things to look ahead to there in that program.
Yeah, they are right now in a virtual tie with White Oak. They're a half game back. They're tied in the loss column. Now Manchester only a game back in the loss column. So that division's still wide open. Fayetteville only 2 games back in the loss column. But this week, I kind of had down as a note, each team takes on Lynchburg next week, so probably going to stay even after that as well, because that Lynchburg team is outstanding on the other side, as we've talked about at length. But I think we're going to be talking a good bit May 7th. Peebles and White Oak take on each other once again. Should be another outstanding contest. We'll definitely highlight that one next week.
Well, we will, but don't forget about some possibility of rain in the middle of the week. And if that ends up scrunching some games together, now all of a sudden pitching staffs are going to get tested unlike any scenario they have all year long, because we've had pretty good weather. So that's something to pay attention to. Obviously, Wells for Lynchburg having the incredible year. Fowl seems to be healthy now and back into the lineup there, anchoring in that particular lineup. And then don't forget, if you run into a Manchester and you get a night where you get a kid like Applegate on the mound or so forth, that could flip the entire script as well.
Well, and then, you have Barnhart from West Union. Obviously, you see that kind of outing, and he's pitched against some really good teams and kept them tighter into the game. It's just if the other positions can make the plays, that can't be a game that you're going to be really excited for. And then obviously with what Fairfield's Ben Miller was able to do.
Yeah. So you run in, and that's what I was saying in the like what if you get some crossover matchups on the mound where you get a Miller versus someone else's number 3 just because of the way the rain worked out or whatever. But the difference in the Lynchburg team that I'm starting to see some characteristics similar to maybe that Peebles team, not to the same level, but the same types of young characteristic, is it doesn't have to come from just one spot in the order. As good as some of those guys were at the top of the lineup there, led by Johnson. Yeah. Like if you look at Lynchburg, I know the Boone kid had a really big hit here recently to help win a game, or we've seen things like Slack or Lewis and their speed. Lynchburg can come at you all the way up and down the lineup. I'll be honest, I saw a little bit of that from Peebles. And if that lineup continues to grow, they're going to cause somebody a big problem here late in the year in that SHAC.
Yeah, and then in the postseason as well, as they're in the smaller divisions as well. So let's go to another league and another team. We talked about them at length last week with Zane Trace, but that is a lineup 1 through 9, and then a couple kids off of the bench as well that can cause a lot of issues. And by doing so, they still sit atop of the SVC.
Well, they're so explosive. We talked about their wake-up call coming earlier in the year. On Monday, Wednesday against Piketon, Nadina, they scored 43 runs. Yeah. I mean, that's probably going to help you win games. But the great equalizer, John, I don't know if you agree, the great equalizer comes from the great pitching. That great pitching versus great offense. Now, all of a sudden on Friday, McWhorter only, according to the box score I saw, only allowed the 3 earned runs. They did get 5 against him and able to escape with the win. But give Southeastern a lot of credit. They went toe-to-toe, and they were that close to really flipping this league upside down. But now 5 games to play. If you're not familiar with the SVC, they'll play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, rain allowing, and that will be it. So Unioto, the 1 game back, they're probably going to have to win out. Unioto does get their head-to-head opportunity this Wednesday, but the league pitching is going to be really, really dynamic because – don't forget, Sanders is going to get a chance for Unioto to pitch against Zane Trace, but that means Unioto has to beat 2 other teams without him on the mound. Now, David Long's been terrific here of late. Some other guys have stepped up and have thrown the ball really well. I think Speakman and Smith. We've talked so much about Zickafoose and Welch at the top of that lineup. Speakman and Smith have really started to come to another level, and it's giving that lineup a little bit more depth. I think that's really important. But you know, you got a 3-loss Westfall team with Conrad and Plute and some of those guys.
Yeah,
You're just capable on any given night.
Well, Westfall goes, you know, just goes 0-3 the week before. We talked about them being at the top of the SEC. They dropped to 3-3. Oh, and what do? They go 4-0 on the week. They have a huge week, and that's kind of what baseball can be. Is sometimes you have a tough week, sometimes you have a really good week, and you can stay in the race if you stack those weeks. And like Cash Conrad was that dude. If he's going to go play at the next level, someone's going to be really happy with him because he can fly. He's got some length. He throws.
Power. I don't think I realized that.
Well, and that's kind of, you know, that was one of the things Ryan Myers that does the scoreboard and does a lot of different things at the VA Memorial Stadium. He had said like, "Oh, this kid looks like he's going to go deep." And I was like, I don't know. And then just crush the ball to right center, and so I get he hits it. I start to get the home run song ready, and then I see where his bat landed, and I was like, oh yeah, I can start playing it now, because it was just one of those. He knew it was gone, and man, he can really play, and that makes them the depth of their lineup is really dangerous as well. So they're going to be one that Union's going to have to beat them, without Sanders on that night, and that's going to be a really tough one. Yeah. Anytime you got to play Westfall anyway is going to be really tough. Then you have to go at Westfall. Yeah. Now, for Southeastern, they're still in it. They do have to host Unioto on Monday. They won't have McWhorter available in that one, so that's going to be an interesting game for them there. But that's also one where Sanders isn't available. Right. They beat Unioto 3-1 the first time. Yeah. And for as you said, for Unioto, it's a really big week. We'll see how the weather deals with them. Yeah. For Zane Trace, you've got a big one. It's a big week for them because you host Huntington on Monday. Huntington more than capable that we've seen throughout. You're at Unioto on Wednesday, maybe Thursday, just kind of weather dependent on that. And then you got a Payne Valley team that was 6-6. They had the go-ahead run on second the first time around at Payne Valley. So that's a Payne Valley team who hasn't won a league game, but so far they've lost, I think, 3 that weren't by 1 or 2 runs. Yeah. So,
I guess that's the thing I would throw at you is I guess it's a little bit, we just talked about Fairfield a second ago. I don't know that Fairfield can win that division, but they could certainly decide who does. Yeah. Same way here in the SVC. Any of these teams, we already mentioned McWhorter, Garrison and Adena. Oyers pitched all kinds of big games throughout his career. With McDonald and Hirsch there at the top of that lineup, as you said, I agree, they're capable. Piketon's found some mixture of arms. I know some nights they give up a ton of runs, but when their top arms are available, they've actually pitched and defended pretty well. Yeah. And then you mentioned even Payne Valley. Keep in mind, they've lost walk-offs against McWhorter, against Garrison, lost to Zane Trace. I think I have this down here somewhere by 1. Yeah, lost to Piketon by 2, Unioto by 2-0. Lost to Westfall there not by 2. So to your point is, any night you slip up in the SVC and you get knocked off by one of them, that could be the difference. Right. So I think that's what's always made the SVC and probably a little bit of the SOC really unique when it comes to baseball in this area is the depth. It's not that the other teams don't have some of the elite teams at the top. What I've always argued is very few teams have the depth top to bottom that the Cider Valley Conference has.
Yeah, that's what ultimately makes them a really dangerous conference overall. Just last thing on that Zane Trace walk-off for Quentin Allen on the night to score Gunnar McCullough. We don't talk a lot about Player of the Year stuff in here. Mm-hmm. The Player of the Year race in the SVC is going to be pretty wild because you have Pierce Manson, who's been unbelievable as a pitcher, but he's pitcher only. Wow. So usually that's going to hurt. Gunnar McCullough's been outstanding. Southeastern's got multiple guys. Yeah. McWhorter's outstanding. Gage Cheadle's unbelievable. Yeah. We talked about Cash Conrad. Unioto with Zickafoose at the top.
You're going to open up a whole other can of worms here, and this will be a conversation that we need to mark for weeks to come in all conferences. But the problem is, I begged the Cider Valley Conference, and I would say this for all conferences, I begged them for years and years and years to separate the pitching and defense, where we could have an all-league pitching staff of, say, 5 kids, but then we could vote our all-league as the position players, because it's kind of like the Ohtani thing in modern day Major League Baseball, like if he's just an average starting pitcher, he's the MVP. There's no one impacting the game that way because of what he. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So like in high school baseball, I can only remember once or twice a true position player even being up for the award or winning the award because of how valuable pitching is. Got to separate it, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, and every year, hey, we'll discuss that next year.
Yeah,
That was every year in there. Yeah. So let's go to one of the best races in our area, which would be the SOC 3 Championship Monday. On Monday will be Minford at Valley. Minford with a chance to earn a share of the SOC 3. And it all really starts because of a gigantic comeback that they had to shock Wheelersburg the other day. At Wheelersburg, they're down 3-0 going into the 7th. They scored 3 times with 2 outs, including an infield single from Ty Borland. High chopper ends up beating it. And then Curtis Glenn never stops running from second base, comes around in a perfect slide to the back corner of the plate to score, to go ahead 4-3. Then they get a stop in the bottom half to keep pace. And then also, Valley ends up losing in the week. So it ends up pushing Minford out to a 1-game lead.
There's just a belief sometimes when you're in a program with what the front of your jersey says. The people who have come before you, they just kind of set an expectation or a tone of the ability to compete all the way down to the final out, and you kind of just sense that. We had a chance to see Minford the other night in person, and boy, did they pass the eye test. Yep. I mean, that lineup is crazy athletic. Obviously led by Louder there at the top and his ability to play short, and then. We watch Bradley pitch, but his 2-hole hitting is obviously. Then they run just a gauntlet of left-handers at you. Yeah. You know what I mean? And with Bradley and you said Borland and Frazee, and then real impressed with the catcher Mullins.
Yep.
He does a really good job there.
Young.
Just also had some big swings for him. So the athleticism is a factor. You mentioned Glenn. His ability to run the bases in that key situation. I thought they were really good defensively because Manchester played a really nice game against them. They were obviously outmanned talent-wise. They went toe-to-toe with them for about, 4 innings probably. There were some key plays there where Evan Richards made a play at third base. That was a really high-level high school play, going glove side, coming home when a base is loaded, less than 2-out spot.
Yep. Because if that play is messed up at all.
I think it's 2-1. They're still batting with 1 out, maybe.
Or if you throw it away, 2 runs
score
on it. Yeah.
No, he made a really good play where a lot of high school players don't even try to make the play. They just throw across the first base and get an out. But no, they're good up the middle. I mentioned Louder, the Donahoe kid. They're athletic. Their pitching is deep. That conference is no joke. I mean, it's going to test you night in, night out. So you start looking ahead in that conference. That's probably not a very good idea.
Yeah, you can't look ahead at all. Then another team that we're going to talk about a little bit in that conference is Waverly. Got a couple of nice wins. They beat Southwest, they beat West. They play Valley pretty tight. Cage Alexander really starting to come on. He homered throughout this week. You got Xander Toller, the freshman. Braylon Skaggs, I just blanked on the name.
That is it, is it?
Now I'm trying to make sure. Spriggs.
Yeah, I was going to say I agreed with you.
Yeah,
Spriggs. Yeah, I just watched him pitch a great game earlier this year.
Yeah, they're really young overall. Caleb Cox does a nice job at short, and it seems like Landon Ramey's starting to come along with the bat a little bit as well. So that's going to make them a really interesting team because Coach Noel missed a little bit of the season with a little illness. He's back now. Yep. So they seem like a team that would get better near the second half of the year. And then when you got Toller and Spriggs as those 1 and 2, if those guys can get lined up in the right way in the right tournament matchup, this is the team that I could see being kind of a sleeper and someone that at the top of D4 isn't going to want to see match up against them in the tournament.
No, you absolutely. We match up perfectly in our thought process here because I was just talking about it in these earlier conferences. Sometimes, John, there's 2 or 3 teams. They're just not quite good enough to go toe-to-toe every single night with Minford or Valley through the whole year. It's not to say they can't beat them on a given night. But what you said, in the one-and-done format, in what I call their tournament lineup. The reason they can't do that is they're not quite deep enough in their pitching or their lineup to be able to do it 3 times in a week. Tournament, you don't have to do that.
Right.
So you line up and you put that A lineup on the field. Well, now all of a sudden, I don't care what your record is, on that night, you're like SOC championship level good, and that makes you just a bear of an out.
Yeah, it just makes you a miserable team to face, and then you go down. And we've talked a little bit about South Webster as a possible state contender in their division. Valley is outstanding. They slip up a little bit, but it's just because that league and who they're going to have to face, dealing with some adversity in their pitching. Speaking of dealing with adversity in their pitching, Wheelersburg's another one. They're throwing a freshman in a lot of big games. South Webster throwing a lot freshman in a lot of big games as well. West dealing with some injury stuff as well. So, this is a really talented conference. I think you're going to see how good this conference is in the postseason.
I would echo that completely.
Then let's stay in the SOC, and we'll let's go in the middle with the SOC 2, a big-time win for Northwest. They beat Symmes Valley, give themselves if they win on Monday at Oak Hill, they will get a share. I believe that wraps up their side. Now for Symmes Valley, it looks like they should probably win out and be able to at least have a share on their side. But Northwest does a great job of staying in it. Chase Kingery struck out 12 in the game. Aiden Armbruster went 4 for 5. That was kind of what we had talked about. Armbruster, when he's available, makes their lineup a whole lot more dangerous. They were up 3-2 going into the 7th. They scored 8 times in the 7th. That was something we kind of saw across different leagues, was just people exploding in that final inning. A really good win for the Mohawks.
Oh, no question. I've not seen Northwest in person this year, and I want to. I've read a couple articles, tried to follow their team a little bit and prep for the show. We have seen Symmes Valley, been real impressed with them. Stroud, the ability to set the table at the top, and then Tanner, the Tanner combination of Korn and Thompson, they do a real nice job. And they too, when they were able to get a couple contributions from the middle third and bottom third of their lineup, they were impressive. They had the ability to really go there. The night we watched them, they ended up running out of pitching a little bit. When you're in that conference race and you're a small school, sometimes you have to just kind of sacrifice the rest of that night for the good of the chase on the rest of the week. So I totally understood what happened to them there. But no, that's a good baseball team.
Yeah, and then for Northwest, they're now 11-3 on the season. Really led at the top of the lineup by Levi Shepard, over 100 career hits. Just an outstanding athlete at the top. Wesson Lang, Peyton Wolf, Braxton Burris, another really nice pitcher for them as well. We mentioned Aiden Armbruster throughout, Chase Kingery. This is a really good lineup. They scored a ton of runs this past week. They went 11-2 at Symmes Valley. They beat a really good Portsmouth Clay team that we'll talk about here in a minute, 6-3 on Tuesday. Put up 21 against South Gallia, 17 on Western. So this week they've got Oak Hill all on the road. Oak Hill, Green, Waverly to start off the first 3 days, and then they've got Wheelersburg on Friday. A really big week for them. But with that depth of the lineup, especially when Armbruster is available, this is a really dangerous team.
Again, each team's in a different spot based on how they rank in their league. This is a team that is in a situation where they're all about the league games. No matter what it means in the non-league, you'll use those opportunities to get better. Obviously, you'd like to win every night, but you're going to make sure your pitching is lined up to give you the very best opportunity to win your particular division.
Yeah, and they've got a great opportunity in front of them to do so. And then somebody that had a great opportunity, we just mentioned that they had lost, was Portsmouth Clay in the SOC 1. They lost that game to Northwest. But besides that, we're outstanding throughout the week. They have a 4-0 win over Green early in the week. Evan Ryder struck out 10, had a 4-hit shutout. As we talked to Coach Crabtree last week on the Haynesville Healthcare Coaches Call-In Show, he had mentioned his 2, 3, 4, 5 hitters are all freshmen. Ryder, only a sophomore. Ryder, Noah Woods, their sophomore freshman catcher, and then Caden Munyon each knocked in a run in that game to beat Green, which was Green's first loss and only loss at this point. And then on Friday night, they beat Notre Dame 4-3 in 9 innings. That was a game where they were up 3-0 going into the 6th. They give up 2 in the 6th, 1 in the 7th, and then they don't freak out, which a young team could definitely do.
Yeah.
They don't freak out.
Yeah.
They end up winning it. A walk-off hit, Noah Woods, once again, knocked in a pinch runner, Derek Oliver, in that inning. So they get to the bottom of the 9th, base hit, base hit, base hit. Three hits, or 3 batters, 3 hits. They win the game. That keeps them alive. Now they're going to need some help because Green still only has 1 league loss because they survived in a major way on Friday night. They went toe-to-toe at Ironton St. Joe. That was a game St. Joe also came back to tie it. Gabe Blevins, though, had a go-ahead single to give the Bobcats a 4-3 win. That was a game where Blevins went 6, was really good in it. And then John Knapp came in and just completely shut things down the last 3 innings. He gave up a hit, or he walked a batter to start the 9th, but that was the only base runner he gave up in the 3 innings. Was pretty dominating for them in that. But St. Joe's also had a really nice win over Notre Dame. They scored 8 times in the 7th inning of a game that they were losing 10-5. So they're down 5, and they scored 8 times in the inning, 6 times with 2 outs to win that game. They eventually win 13-11, but that made it 13-10. Beckham Waginger knocked in 2 with a 2-out double. Then Mason Weber knocked Barrett and Beckham Waginger 2 pitches later with the game-winning single. Just a great week for Ironton St. Joe. That's a really good conference. You've got 4 really good teams in that conference.
You just did an outstanding job of running through some individuals. So what I want to say about it is this. I said this in basketball, but maybe we have new viewers here in the spring. Hats off to the SOC. What they've done in modern-day enrollment is they figured out a way to at least keep some of their conference name together and some of their teams together, but they've been able to get really creative in the enrollment, and they've been able to find a competitive balance. There's a quote unquote term that's thrown out there and sometimes taken a little bit more seriously than others in conferences, but the SOC, and I would say the SHAC falls under this. There's some conferences out there that have been really dynamic in their thinking, and what they're doing is they're passing some other conferences up in competitive balance because of their ability to kind of think into this modern day enrollment. And the SOC is a leading leadership in that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they're going to be evolving throughout as well, and it gives teams the option to be where they,
right.
Do you want to compete against some of those teams? They've given some teams the opt-out options as well,
right.
And that's just a way to just constantly be evolving, as you said. Maybe you don't have a Division III going against a Division VII in your conference.
That's right.
Just because of where you're sitting geographically, as we say in the opener, big geography guy, and you don't have to just base everything along with that. So a couple big games in that conference throughout this week, but you got Green and Notre Dame playing a 2-game series at Green on Monday, at Notre Dame on Wednesday. It'll be interesting to see how the pitching matches up, with if they throw Cassidy in there to go against Knapp, or if they try to sneak a win against Knapp.
Both those teams have legit number 2s.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing could happen is if one of those games start to get away, what happens to the third? What you really hope doesn't happen this week in the league with the pitch count. This is where the pitch count's different. You really hope you don't run into one of these situations where you get 2 or 3 innings in where someone's well over, say, 50 pitches, but like 55 pitches, and then all of a sudden – you don't get the ability to have that talented arm in the next 2 nights or whatever. And so I just hope, for the sake of the leagues, as someone who's just on the outside looking in and just wanting to see great baseball, not really a rooting interest, I just hope everybody weather-wise allows them to have their best arms to see who really are the best teams.
Well, let's hope Lynchburg's not listening at this point, because that happened to them.
Oh, no doubt.
That happened to them last year
have
at the state tournament.
You don't have to tell me. Yeah, I remember
like,
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just that's where the pitch count can kind of impact things in a huge way. So let's go to another league that does things pretty interesting, where the pitch count does impact things in a big way, is the FAC. which got shook up in a huge way on Wednesday. Chillicothe beats Miami Trace 6-5, giving Jackson a 1-game lead with 4 games left to play. Chillicothe was down 5-3, was down 5-3 in the game. Tay Harris had an RBI double. That kid is outstanding. Just super fun to watch him play defense, hit. Really outstanding pitcher as well. He had an RBI double, cut the 5-3 lead to 5-4. Eshawn Brown then singled to bring him home, but also Connor Bolin had moved up to third on that double. So a 2-run RBI single for Eshawn Brown, and then Harris comes in the 7th to shut things down. Aiden Scales went 6 really good innings for them. An outstanding win for Chillicothe in that program, who's a very young team as well.
Yeah, we've been talking. It's kind of becoming a theme of the show here. Teams that are not going to win their league that might decide who does. That Chillicothe win could go a long way. And that's not to say Miami Trace is out of it, but it certainly puts Jackson in the driver's seat. So my point is with Chillicothe, they're a team that Coach Barr, we've heard him on the show. We've had him at the VA a few times, so I've really talked to him kind of off the record a little bit, and he's just you could tell that he likes his team. They're still searching and trying to put it all together, and when they're right, there's some potential there. And man, what a big win! The arms of Scales and Harris are very capable. Bolin at the top of that order, very, very capable. You mentioned Brown. I like him. I like the protection Brown's starting to get in the order. The couple times I've seen them, I've been impressed with the lefty swing of Jaden Gallagher. So he gives them a little bit of protection there, and that starts to give a little bit of meat in the middle. Coach Barr's talked on the show about it. Competition throughout, and they're going to get better and better. And as you get later in the season, you may not always be what your record says you are in terms of the product you're going to put out on the field on that given night. And I think that's what happened there in a big-time win in the FAC for a lot of teams at the top, not named Miami Trace.
Yeah, it was really big for Jackson for them to get that win. On the night, they had 2 hits from Connor Bolin, Eshawn Brown, Jaden Gallagher, as you mentioned him as well, and Tay Harris all had 2 hits. I really like what that team can do, and I think they're just going to keep getting better and better. Bolin's going to be a big-time loss for them. James Wrinkle is another one that's going to be a big-time loss, another really dynamic player that can play all over the field. But you return a lot of really talented players. For Miami Trace, they're dealing with a lot of injuries. You lose Cam Morton. He's I would say probably the top arm in the league, and you lose him pretty much for a
Gage
second.
Bowers is having quite a year.
Yeah, Gage Bowers has been outstanding.
Really good year.
He had 3 RBI on that night, had another triple. This dude can play.
Yeah, he can really, really play. He impacts it with a lot of different tools up and down the lineup for led by a lot of different kids, that can do a lot of things. But, man, he really anchors it. He's good.
Yeah, he's 20 out of 39 on the season, just on the games on the FAC site. 21 RBIs on the season in that time with 11 extra base hits. That's outstanding to get from your sophomore shortstop. They've still got some big-time thump in that lineup, with Heyer and Enix as well. And then you got Austin Brown and McBee at the top. They're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
But this is a big-time loss, and that kind of just shows kind of where they're at pitching-wise. Kind of cool thing, on Saturday they get a win, and that was Coach Rob Smith's 200th win at Miami Trace. A whole lot of wins over, in town, I guess, when you say over at Washington as well. One of the top coaches in our area. That's a really good league because you move down as well. Hillsboro's having a nice year. McLean is having a really nice season.
Those are some competitive pitching duels in that Jackson-McLean 2-game series.
Yeah, so if you go down through that league, you have Jackson at 5-1, Miami Trace 4-2, Hillsboro's 3-3, and then McLean, Chillicothe, and Courthouse all at 2-4. Everyone is 500 or better in that league. Courthouse sitting at 7-7. But you have Chillicothe 7-6, McLean 9-6, 8-7 is Hillsborough, and then 8-2 is Miami Trace, and 11-3 is Jackson. So I believe Miami Trace is actually 8-3 now because I don't think their Saturday stuff is in here. But
And I'll apologize to the kid, but if we're going to talk about the conference, we need to talk about the kid from Courthouse, Sam. How are you saying that last name? Lotz? Lotz. Man, he's putting together. I have not seen him in person this year, but he's putting together quite a senior campaign, as is Zach Brown there at Hillsborough.
Yeah, he's got some really good size. He can run. He can play up the middle. He can throw. Sam Lotz is one of those players that he's one of those types of kids that you could see getting a conference player of the year on a team that isn't going to win. He's another one. 564 on the season with 9 extra base hits. Yeah. He's got 12 RBI, 17 runs scored. 17 walks on the season, at almost 700 on base percentage, 690 on base percentage for him. That's just hitting. And then you go over to fielding wise, a 2.88 ERA. He's been really good, 36 strikeouts in 17 innings. So very impressive there. Only 7 walks as well for someone who's got the big time arm. So he's going to give them a chance anytime he's on the bump. But if you get him, up to the dish, you like his chances to at least get on base if he gets a pitch to hit. And I don't blame teams for not giving him a pitch.
Yeah. It comes down to protecting him in the order a little bit, because I know in that lineup from calling the basketball games, when you see names like Heath and Osborne and so forth, they're athletic. So it's just a matter of sometimes getting him protected in the order.
Now keep an eye out on this name as well. Malachi Wynn, a freshman, has a 0.85 ERA and 24 innings pitched for them.
Yep.
Not a ton of strikeouts. So the ball's going to get put in play a lot. So that might bump up eventually, just because of kind of that, what is it, BABIP, the batting average on balls in play.
Yeah.
So that could kind of balance itself out in a way. But he's done a great job of taking the ball and controlling things. Like in their win over Hillsborough, complete game, he gives up 11 hits, but only 3 runs in the game. So he's doing a great job not walking people and giving away things, and his defense playing well behind him in those games. So keep an eye out on that league throughout coming up. Should be a really interesting league overall.
Yeah, no question. Their format's intriguing. I know the Chillicothe Jackson is going to catch a lot of softball attention this week, and then I believe Jackson would still have their Hillsborough series left to finish it off first week of May.
And that's a good Hillsborough team as well. A lot of experience in there as well. So now let's go over to another really interesting league. The OVC looked like it was going to get blown wide open this week, but Ironton is able to stay afloat as they were almost, at 2 games back, even though there's still a few games left to play. They may have been out of the race, but they're able to salvage things with a huge 8th inning win over Portsmouth on Friday night. They lose to Fairland and was really a pretty big shocker on Wednesday, but a 7-4 win in 8 innings over Portsmouth on Friday night keeps them alive.
Yeah, well, and the Fairland program, there's a lot of pride in that program. So coming up with a big win like that doesn't surprise you. It's so hard in league play and league rivalries to go through the entire year and win them all. You know what I mean? Like, it's just hard. But then I told you off the record today, I knew Portsmouth, I knew Ironton. The team that's jumped out at me out of nowhere is this Gallia Academy team. That's the one that's kind of shaking everything up down there in that conference, for me at least. Maybe people down there might know it better, might have ended up seeing it coming. I did not see that coming in the preseason.
Well, I know with Logan Drummond coming back, you have Beckett Camden, you had a couple of solid arms that could play as well. Drummond had a couple of tough luck losses early in the season, so maybe they had a couple of those losses. But overall, they've done nothing but take care of their business in the OVC. They're 12-5. They're sitting in first by a game. They're 8-1 right now in the conference, but man, they've got a tough week coming up. They're at Portsmouth on Monday, then they've got Ironton on Wednesday. If they're going to get a piece of the league, they've got it all in front of them right now, but it's going to be really tough to get through that week. Maybe they're one of those that's, hey, rain wouldn't be the worst thing for them on that Wednesday.
Yeah.
But man, they are a well-coached team.
Yeah.
They do some really good things. They're very athletic. They play good defense, and they've got a nice lineup 1 through 9.
Yeah, this is why you play. You get this opportunity. It's right out there in front of you. And, boy, is that going to test their pitching staff this week.
Yeah, it's a very tough week for them overall. But, Portsmouth has a chance. They're going to see that as a big-time missed opportunity for them in that loss to Ironton. I know just talking to our Brock Netter, he was down at the game, and he just said, that 8th inning was just kind of bizarre. They had a couple of opportunities to make some big-time plays and just overall didn't make the plays, and kind of some mental lapses as well occurred in that last inning, and because of that, they were ultimately unable to get it done. So a really nice win for Ironton to keep themselves alive, and then that game on Wednesday, keep an eye out on that. At Gallia Academy, more than likely for a share of the league at the very least for the Blue Devils.
Yeah, no question. I'm anxious to follow it. I think there's going to be some outstanding pitching there, depending on how those games go, depending on how the rain goes. Maybe as you get later in the week, maybe offense will be required a little bit more. But no, I'm excited for those programs to have a chance to go head to head and see who comes out on top.
Yeah, anytime you can play for a championship is a major deal. Let's see if the Trojans can shake things up and keep themselves alive in the race as well, as they sit 1 game back as well. So moving over to one of our deeper leagues in our area is the MSL Buckeye. Things at least did get a little bit more interesting as Bloom-Carroll beats Fairfield Union in 6 rain-shortened innings on Thursday to get a game back, to cut to only a game back of the Falcons. First league loss for Fairfield Union on the year. Bloom-Carroll does a great job of getting themselves back into the league race.
When you get into these bigger schools, you're going to naturally have a few elite arms throughout the conference. You're going to have a little bit more depth of arms, kind of a little bit more depth of athleticism up and down the lineup. So that's where on a given night you could really get yourself in trouble when you overlook someone, and that's kind of what's happened here. Obviously, there's incredible pitching at the top that's separated Fairfield Union at this point, but a lot of good programs there. Maybe not as good on paper as they've been here in recent years, but if you think about it, a lot of those types of programs have been the types of programs in the last 4 or 5 years that have started to play their best baseball as the calendar turns May. And that's what it would really, really worry me to see some teams like a Circleville, like a Logan Elm. They're just lurking there a little bit, and boy, could they play a factor in this thing.
Yes, it could be a big-time impact. And when you mentioned Circleville, even Liberty Union, who made it to the Final Four a few years ago, and I was just looking up Jacob Miller earlier this afternoon, just because one of the kids in one of the games that was played, Jacob Miller. Just like, hey, let's see how he's doing right now. And I mean, you get a guy that's in AA, and have that long-term impact for your program. They're still technically in the race, but a tough week still ahead for Fairfield Union, but everything's still right in front of them to at least get a share of the league. Now remember, this is a 7-team league for at least this season. Logan will be coming into the MSL Buckeye soon. I'm not sure if it's this coming year or the year after, but it is a 12-game regular season for them in league play. So a chance to wrap up a piece for Fairfield Union coming up. They travel to Circleville on Wednesday, and then they host Liberty Union on Friday. A couple really tough games. Circleville not having the year that I think that they were anticipating. Had a couple of things happen, and that long basketball run. But this is still a Circleville team that I think you got to keep an eye on because it's a well-coached team that can really play with a lot of experience, a lot of winning experience as well.
Well, and like I said, if you go back and look at some of the recent tournament runs, they weren't all just incredible regular season records.
Yeah.
They lost some games throughout. They found themselves But it just seems like to me there's always a couple teams out of the middle of that conference, not necessarily the conference champion. They come out of the middle of that conference, they go into the postseason, and they find something right around early May, and they take off. So that's something I'm just going to be paying attention to see if there's not a particular arm or maybe a particular bat somewhere in an order there out of one of those middle teams that doesn't maybe jumpstart something here and really impact something this week.
Yeah, and that's just what to keep an eye out on that. And as you mentioned, with weather possibly playing a role coming up in the middle of the week as well. So let's go to the TVC. We're pretty much going to just hit on every league.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Ohio. So in the Ohio, you had a little bit of a breakdown that you could talk about.
Well, what jumped out at me, I wanted to get your take on. I think what's so interesting about the Ohio this year, we always know Athens is kind of there at the top. And Wellston and a lot of their boys' sports has kind of had a little bit of a resurgence here. We see that in baseball. You could kind of see it coming in last year's postseason. It's kind of come into this year's regular season. Benton County's having one of the better years they've had. Now, Alexander's a name we usually see at the top. They're a little bit down, but again, are they the type of program, because of what they've accomplished, that could play spoiler in the upcoming weeks? That's something to pay attention to. Obviously, Meigs has been a team here in, goodness, they've got the Stewart pitch in Division I at OU just a couple of years back, River Valley. These are capable teams, but I just think it's interesting. I think that Wellston and Benton County become two important schools in that division of the TVC and all sports, that when they're relevant, it brings more depth to the conference. And I don't know, it just seems like to me over the last couple of years is like, oh, Athens is really good, Alexander pretty good, Athens beats Alexander conference. That's not what it is this year. There's a little bit more depth to it. Do you am I seeing that the right way?
I completely agree. This is, seen Benton County a couple different times out of the VA. They actually lose a game earlier this week. It might have been the fastest game we had all year there. It was a
sure that ended up breaking your heart.
Yeah, it was it was a weird night. So it was a 1-0 game, and it was just an outstanding high school baseball game. We'll talk about Trimble a little bit on the backside of the TVC, but this is a Benton County team, and they got a little bit of the adversity that happened to Circleville. A little bit helps them. So David Northam ends up at Benton County, and that dude is outstanding. He's got multiple pitches. He can really throws the ball well. The Hocking kid's a really nice piece, and White Channel pitched an outstanding game on Monday, and that gives them two really nice arms at the top, and a really solid catcher as well, and the shortstop, third base, really solid defensively. We saw Alexander pitch later that night. Was another really good game. It was a 1-0 and a 3-0 games on that night. Stevens pitched really well for Alexander that night. I feel like they're a team that, if they get the right matchup, you could tell they're young. They play together and play for each other, and just kind of a young team as well. So I do think this league it has the ability to get shaken up by whoever, with Wellston and Athens at the top right now. But don't be surprised if Benton County sneaks up into that, or as you mentioned, Alexander or Meigs maybe deciding who wins the league, even if they're not going to win the league.
Well, you're starting to get to that point in the year where young kids have 45, 50, 55, 60 varsity at bats under their belt, and they start to get a little bit more comfortable. And that's why late in the year, I think teams become a little bit more dangerous. I think their lineups top to bottom. Maybe you see a pitcher for the second time. Maybe you're not quite as intimidated at the 80-mile-per-hour fastball or the 78 mile-per-hour fastball as you were in week one of your freshman year or sophomore year. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So, lineups become a little deeper. And as you said, some of these teams, when they have the right arm on the mound, they can beat anyone on any given night. I'd pay close attention to that in that TVC Ohio. Don't be surprised if a program like an Alexander ends up blowing someone's year up a little bit here in the upcoming weeks.
Yep, wouldn't surprise me one bit. And then let's go to the Hocking to kind of round things out. Overall, Eastern Reedsville seems like they're a little bit above, but at the same time, you've got like a Trimble when you've got, a Kehoe or a Warren. Benny Warren had the shutout that night, was really good. Paul Sharp, an outstanding center fielder. Bykowski is another good bat in their order. I think this is a Trimble team. I know they're down pretty big to a really good Waterford team in a game that got rained, kind of postponed in that one. Just overall, your thoughts on the TBC hockey?
Well, I still think Coach Stewart's Eagles set the complete standard in that conference this year. They're going to be your outright winner, led by the outstanding talent of Ethan Edwards, who just come up on what I read there, 100 hits, 100 stolen bases, 100 runs. I mean, just been a part of so much of winning. And then Hunter Needs also does a super job, and you know, keep in mind Edwards also pitched the perfect game, wasn't it, against Belpre to clinch the outright title. So I think they clearly set the standard still, even though they may not even be as good as they were last year. They're still really good, but all of these programs have been mainstays in the district tournament, and I think you mentioned Trimble. Trimble was a huge problem in tournament because their pitching is going to line up and be really, really tough to beat. Same way, we've seen the program tradition of a Waterford, a Racine, Southern, those types of teams. I think that they're all going to line up and beat up on each other from 2 down in that conference this year. But come tournament time, I could still see over half of that league being represented in the district tournament.
Yeah.
All of them in the district
right
now.
But
But I'm
like
saying the old
district final
sectional
level.
final on now into the district semifinal. Yeah,
You're going to get used to that.
I guess.
You hate it. I
So they
know.
say.
That and prom, and,
Yeah.
you know, we got to get you used to all these different things as well. So let's move on to the last thing for this week, and it's just kind of be a rundown. Well, not the last thing for this week, but the last thing for the baseball section of this week, which will be kind of big games this week. We got some big games across the area. We might take a couple seconds to say something about some of them. We've talked about some of them already. So if you didn't hear it, it could be like, you know, Notre Dame at Green on Monday. We don't have to throw that in there because we talked about it earlier. Unioto hosting Zane Trace on Wednesday. Obviously, big game. We talked about it earlier. Just so if we missed one, more than likely it's because we discussed it earlier as well. So on Monday, we got Huntington at Zane Trace. Kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. Unioto at Southeastern. Big game for Southeastern just to try to keep a little bit of pace in there as well. Jackson at Chillicothe. That'll be the opposite on Wednesday. Washington at Miami Trace. That's, we'll see. Is that going to be Lotz against who for Miami Trace? Can Miami Trace put up enough offense in that game against like a Sam Lotz to knock off their county rival?
It's always interesting to me. I'd have to ask a coach. I've never coached in this format out of my 30 years. Is like when you're the team that's trying to maybe play spoiler, like, is there some gamesmanship on like when you pitch your number one? Who's to say I have to pitch? I can only throw him one game anyway. Now you roll, you risk rain or something like that in the second one. But like I just wonder how some teams play that in terms of their ace. Do they throw them the first game automatically if the forecast looks good? Do you hold them off to the second one? And you mentioned some of these other games. What you're getting into now. These are elimination games.
Yes.
I mean, you mentioned big game for Southeast. That's a big game for Unioto.
Yes.
I mean, are you predicting that Zane Trace is going to lose 2 times in the last 5? No. So it's pretty much a win out if you're Unioto as well. So these are elimination games throughout all of these conferences that are taken.
Yep, and another elimination game. You kind of mentioned them. We didn't really go in depth on Logan Elm, but Bloom-Carroll at Logan Elm. This is a Logan Elm team that, I mean, record-wise, just kind of like last year.
Lurking.
Lurking. You see the record, and maybe it's sleep on them a little bit.
Yeah.
But they've got some really high-end talent on that team, and, it's not – the consistency isn't always there, but that one game where last year they had a couple – it lined up really well for them late in the year. They've got some really nice pieces.
Yeah, you're just looking for a late season win that jumpstarts your team into the postseason. We
talked about Gallia Academy at Portsmouth. That's a huge one in the OVC. one that is kind of a standings game, Waverly at Wheelersburg. That one could feature some really high-end freshman pitching in that one, so that one could be really fun. And then Vinton County at Athens, we talked about that. Vinton County still has a chance to get a piece of the TVC Ohio. So to do so, they would have to go to Athens, go to the Plains, and they'd have to get a win there.
Yeah, no question. Then I'm cheating down your list there a little bit. Athens no more going to have the Vinton County game there, and then come Wednesday, they've got Wellston come calling as well.
So that's where pitching. Maybe you have a one.
Yep.
What do you do in that first one? Do you maybe take a risk? Because if right now showing rain on Wednesday, if you take that risk and you throw your one on Monday to get the win, and maybe you get a little help from Mother Nature to sit back, or maybe you say, I think we can get them. Well, what if you don't? And then your pitcher doesn't even throw Wednesday because of the rain. So a lot to think about when it comes to coaching in that as well. So Tuesday, you get some action going on. Well, some shaction as well. Peebles at Lynchburg Clay. White Oak at Fayetteville. Fayetteville has some really interesting pieces in that team. Record-wise, doesn't look great, but that's a huge game for White Oak if they want to keep pace with Peebles, because Peebles, it's going to be a really tough one for them at Lynchburg Clay, but a must-win for White Oak in a situation on the road.
Yeah, well, no question. And White Oak will throw good pitching. The question I have with White Oak is, will they be able to get enough offense down the stretch here?
Yeah, but that's kind of can come with a team with youth. And then Eastern Reedsville at Trimble on Tuesday. That's a big TVC Hocking game, but as you said, really high on this Eastern Meigs team.
Yeah, they're really good, but it's a great rivalry. And again, Trimble will most likely throw a really capable arm, so that's a real good tournament prep type of game for Trimble, as that conference has been decided. But like the Trimble team down the stretch, just not a team I would want in my bracket, just from the ability of the arm that you're going to see.
Yeah, then pretty much Wednesday, we pretty much covered these games. Westfall at Southeastern, that's going to be a quarter against whatever arm Westfall decides to go with. If they go with Conrad, could be a really capable arm there. Caleb Lowe's been really good for them. AJ Pluta's been good for them. So they've got some nice pieces there. That one could be a pretty interesting game. Could be a lot of offense. I know it was a really tight game up at Westfall as well. A big win for Southeastern that night. You've got Ironton at Gallia Academy. We talked about Fairfield Union at Circleville. Has a chance for Fairfield Union to get closer to that league title, and then Wellston at Athens, as we mentioned as well.
Yeah, you're getting that late into the upcoming week. You're starting to get into more and more elimination games, or at least even the teams that are on top, if they're going to win outright titles, pretty much must win.
And then Thursday, Lynchburg Clay at White Oak. That's one where, for White Oak, and that's what makes that Tuesday game even more interesting. Do you wait on Cliff until the Thursday game? Because if you do so, then that could make it to where Fayetteville has even more of a chance, and that's kind of one of those things. Once again, you talk about, and then you have White Oak with the turf field. You're probably going to be playing that game regardless of what the rain would do on Wednesday. So keep an eye out on that. Fayetteville at Manchester could be an interesting one. Wheelersburg at Jackson, a really fun non-conference game on Thursday. Friday, another elimination game in the SVC. You got Unioto at Westfall. A couple more nice non-conference games, a few more non-conference games, where you got Circleville at Miami Trace, Portsmouth Clay at White Oak, and then Trimble at Amanda Clear Creek. We've seen those teams. There's some really talented teams taking on each other late in the season in the non-conference.
Yeah, the Meigs Vinton County one coming up there, that's a conference game, but some of these other ones non-conference, and you're right, you have some really intriguing matchups there that you don't know what happened in pitching matchups because they're in the middle of some league races, but yeah, there's some good matchups there.
And then Saturday, you got a big one, probably seeding wise. Will be an impactful one. Will be Lucasville Valley at Zane Trace on a Saturday morning, afternoon, and that's one of those things. Coach Allen, he will play anybody, anytime, anywhere. Like if you look at their schedule at the end of the year, it's ludicrous because
always has been.
Yeah, I think it's like they're 11-5, so they have 11 games left. I saw 2 that I'm like, yeah, they should probably will win that one. Other than that, I mean, it's like it's kind of coin flips the rest of the way, and even one of those was a game that they won a really tight one, so that probably is a coin flip as well. So that's why they're going to be a tournament ready team.
Well, over the last 20 years, they've always been a mainstay in the top half of the league. Even when they're not going to win the league, they're going to win more than they lose. So the ability is there to go ahead and really test yourself in the non-league to prepare for the postseason.
Yeah, and that's why their hitters are always ready for the postseason as well. So that'll be baseball. Do you have any other thoughts on baseball?
It'll be exciting.
Yep. Big thing on baseball. Also, our last baseball live stream of the regular season for our area will be on Tuesday. You've got Waverly against McLean. That's going to be 2 young teams that have really high ceilings for not only this year, but for the next few years as well. So that one should be really fun. And then our other live stream for the week will be on Monday, and that's where we'll start in the TV our game. This is where if I edited these, I would edit that out. But for our other live stream for this week will be in the FAC, which will feature a start for the league championship series, which will be Chillicothe and Jackson. They are both 8-0 in the league. They are tied at the top. The winner on Monday out at VA Memorial Stadium will get at least a share, and we'll have a little bit of momentum going into Wednesday when they go down to Jackson to play. Man, we couldn't have asked for a better time to get back into the softball realm than to have Jackson at Chillicothe at VA Memorial Stadium.
I agree completely. I've been really working the last couple of weeks, as I told you, talking softball with people about the offense and the home runs of Jett and Adina and really the entire Piketon and Symmes Valley lineups, and then obviously Bolton House here at Chillicothe that we're going to talk about. But what's unique about Chillicothe Jackson, you get back to the elite pitching, it's a little bit more what we're used to, and it kind of shows you that when the elite pitching takes on that elite hitting, runs become a lot harder to come by, and that shows up in their run differential and so forth. But this is a really, really good matchup. I'm excited. These 2 girls in the circle with Riddiger there of CHS and Taylor and Jackson, just their numbers speak for themselves. But Chillicothe, they have 4 of the top 9, 5 of the top 15 hitters in the FAC throughout their lineup. Riddiger herself offensively, 543 with 17 RBIs and 100 hits on the career, obviously known for the circle. To give people an illustration of what we're talking about, struck out 19 kids against Westfall. So think about the runs that the SVC scoring.
Yeah.
Struck out 19 against Westfall, gave up 1 run to Unioto. So it's just, obviously the pitching's held true there, but Bolton House just hit the 17th home run of the career. That's a school record. Huddleston's in there. Morgan hits over 400, I think 100 hits. She's one of the 3 seniors on the team, and then Whitty even in there at 356. So it's a long list of some athletes there on that side. But then I know even Wade hit a home run against Miami Trace the other night. But that the Jackson team, man, their speed game's what jumps out at me. They have a lot of kids that have scored a lot of runs. They steal some bases. And that makes me think that a big key for them in this upcoming matchup is going to be, can they get the ball in play? Mm-hmm. I mean, Riddiger is striking out almost 2 kids per inning. The pressure that takes off the Chillicothe defense is incredible. Now, Taylor strikes out about 1 per inning, and you might say, well, that's not that far off. But it's another 7 plays your defense has to make against high-level athletes getting down the line. That's a factor. So I think a big key for this one I'm going to be watching for is with 2 strikes, can the Jackson hitters get the ball in play and make someone else get them out instead of letting that Chillicothe battery do so much of the 2/3 of the damage?
Well, I think I've mentioned it before. It was a Westfall team that won the 2020 or the 2014 state championship. In a game, they struck out 27 times. Now it goes 14 innings. Mm-hmm. Struck out 27 times. They just start bunting to put the ball in play, to make something happen. And then eventually They get a runner on second. They get their first hit of the game in the bottom 14th, state champions. Because you play elite defense, you've got really good speed, and that's something that Jackson can do. They do a really good job of run prevention as well. Not nearly as good as Chillicothe does, because Chillicothe has only given up 38 runs on the year. They're giving up less than 2 runs a game.
Yeah.
But this is a Jackson team. They're still not giving up a whole lot of runs. They've got blown out in the non-conference in that Tays Valley game that we talked about a couple weeks ago. But overall, they've been really good.
Yeah.
They score a ton of runs. They've scored 30 more runs than Chillicothe has on the year. They've played 2 more games, but they've scored a lot of runs. They've scored way more runs in the league as well. So you get some runners on, you make some things happen. As you said, Worsham has done a really good job. She's knocked in 27 runs on the year. Swisher's knocked in 26. Maddie Wright's knocked in 24. Lily Aberts has knocked in 19 on the year.
We have 5 kids hitting 360 or higher.
Yeah, so I mean, they've shown the ability to get on base and to make things happen when they get on base. They're going to have to get on base at a really high level to give themselves a chance in this contest.
And I don't even know if it's going to be a high level, John. I think that's a tough ask. I think what it's going to be is opportunistic, right? I think it's going to be, like I said, with 2 strikes, can you get the ball in play? Can you use your speed? Can you move people over? I always felt like the number one key to beating great pitching is pitching great yourself. So, okay, this isn't going to be, I don't think it'll be, a 9-8 game, right? I see this more as, runs hard to come by. And I think that will be a factor. But it's unique in talking to people about all the offense, all the home runs that are just flying out all over the Southeast District. When you get back to the elite pitching still has its way, and that's what's unique about these 2 teams.
You got a 215-foot fence tomorrow night, a little lower fence, but it's still
wind probably blowing out the right center.
If it's going to be anything like it was this whole spring, the wind will be blowing out hard to right center as well. It's going to be a hot day, so the ball could fly a little bit there as well. But this is a pitcher who has shut down some outstanding offenses. As you said, those Westfall Unioto offenses are really good. She shuts out Ironton as well. That's a really good offensive team. Just overall, but there are times they've given up some runs. At Logan Elm, at Bloom-Carroll, those are 2 outstanding teams across our area as well. Portsmouth West scored 5 against them. They've given up runs at times, not very often, but they have given up runs at times. Let's see if Jackson can make enough things happen to where they can get some runs across.
Yeah, that's the key. I'm excited to call it. As you said, first time on SOSA, and it's a pleasure to be a part of. I think it's going to be good.
It could be a really fast night. So if you're not tuned in at 5 p.m., make sure you check out the replay of the live stream if you would have missed it, because you've got outstanding pitchers in the circle and should just be a really fun night at the ballpark. Senior night for Chillicothe as well, as they're going to celebrate their 3 seniors. Should be a really fun one. Can't wait to watch back you and Carson call that one, as I will be running around doing so many things on that day. So announcing, scoreboard, music, camera, also keep my scorebook, which that might be the least my scorebook's ever been kept in that one, other than just to keep track of where everything is going to be at the time. So really looking forward to that game. Opportunity for those kids to play out there at the VA, and things go well, it's going to be something that we're going to be doing a lot more of in the future as well. As I know one of the reasons was the fence was kind of in disrepair. Got a new fence, and that's going to be the debut of it. Is going to be. I'm actually, after this, I'm going to be driving over there just to see what it looks like, how the setup is going. And if it's not set up yet, I'm going to go laugh at those guys because they've had like 2 hours to do it. So actually, I shouldn't laugh at them because I'm going to be one of like 3 people taking it down. You might see Shayne taking it down tomorrow night as well.
Whatever I got to do to help.
Yeah, exactly. So we appreciate that about you. So let's go over, from one of our biggest conferences enrollment-wise to one of our smaller ones. In the SOC2, we had an outstanding game played in Beaver that clinches a title for Symmes Valley. It was something I had written down. It was like, Symmes Valley clinches another title with a Friday night win in Beaver was all I had. And then the game happened. and just what a game it was. I get a call from Derek Webb on the way back from that game. He's like, "Man, I'm glad you told me to go to that game. It was an outstanding game." I was like, "Oh, what happened?" I literally had just seen that Eastern was winning going into the 7th. It was all I saw. But a 4-run top of the 7th inning for Symmes Valley to win the game. Macy Bland, so 1 out. Brenna Tibbs walks on 4 pitches. Not an intentional walk, but I think maybe kind of an intentional walk. She walks on 4 pitches, steals second, then Macy Bland singles her home to tie the game. And then, as you would do, Eastern then intentionally walks Marley Ferguson. Completely makes sense. Another D1 signing, huge power, makes sense. Catcher Casey Thompson then hitting in the 4-hole, hits a 3-run shot to center field to win the game for the Vikings. They go up 8-5. Tibbs gets the hold in the bottom half of the inning, but another SOC2 title for them. Just an outstanding game overall. Just that's what you want. When you have a league championship game, you want it to come down to the last inning, and it happened because of the outstanding pitching on both sides. So Tibbs ended up striking out 9 on the night. She did not give up an earned run. They moved to 20-2 on the season, but I do want to talk about Leah Rader. She goes 6 innings for the Eagles. She struck out 10. She also went 2 for 3 at the plate with an RBI. Libby Poorman had a pair of hits, scored twice for Eastern, but we've talked about the home run. Ultimately, the difference in this one, you have Thompson's home run, but also Tibbs and Ferguson each homered, and then Alyssa Wall also homered. When you've got that many players in your lineup that can hit the long ball, it just makes you just so dangerous, especially at the smaller school level.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. If I remember correctly in Derek's coverage, did they say 8 different kids have hit 22 home runs for them this year?
Yeah.
Wow. And as you were reading through that in the last inning, and I think of what that program's accomplished, I couldn't help but think back to Memphis in our baseball coverage about an hour ago when we were talking about, what they did in the 7th inning against Wheelersburg. It's just something about the tradition. When your kids are used to winning, it doesn't mean they'll win every time, but it means they think they're supposed to. All the way down to the last out, they think that we're going to win. No, we're down 3. Well, no, we're going to win. And if there's an out left, we're going to win. And and after a while, when you've accomplished that, I'm not so sure your opponent isn't on the other side thinking they're kind of supposed to beat it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's that hardest thing to do to get over the hump and kind of establish yourself with that. So listen, give Eastern a lot of credit here. They're going to be just fine. They're going to continue to grind and get better and better and better. Obviously, the Symmes Valley program, what a big-time performance. But I just couldn't get over the power surge that they've had throughout and what we've been talking about with a lot of different coaches and so forth. And they've talked about how, yes, equipment's push the limits on this, and pitching may not be as good, or the pitching depth's not as good. But man, that I don't care who you're facing or what's going on. You start hitting the ball at that level of power, that's big time.
Yeah, when you've got power throughout your lineup, makes you just so dangerous overall. This is Symmes Valley team that, once again, it's a very small public school, and they're rolling out players to the Division I level to just play in college at all. You have to be elite, and this is something that we've said on here before, but really want to make it known. You have to be elite to play at the college level in any sport, and then to go do it at that small of a school and to just continuously do it, that just says what that program is. And it was great to talk to Coach Estep last week on the Coach's Show.
Enjoyed that.
Yeah, and he talked about how his program and 35 years and just having good people coaching in it at all levels. And that starts in the little league and it goes all the way up through the middle school into the high school. And you see why this Symmes Valley program is the way it is.
No question about it. Congratulations to them.
Yeah, and then we've mentioned them a couple different times, but this is an Eastern team, 15-3 on the season. Another one of those small areas where they've had a lot of success, and a lot of that has to do with pitching because we mentioned Raider. Paige Helton had the perfect game last week as well. Just gives them a couple of really nice arms to have, and that's going to give them a chance to make a deep tournament run as well.
And if you missed it on the baseball side, the other thing I mentioned about the SOC is just their dynamic conference structure in terms of how they've really moved forward in this in time of enrollment. And man, they make for some really, really competitive scenarios in all these sports.
Yep, and that's why it makes them such an interesting league to follow across each sport, and that's why most of the time it's very competitive until the very end. Let's move over to the TVC, Ohio, where we had a really interesting week over there as well. Meigs with a huge 4-3 win at Wellston on Wednesday evening. And this is where we're going to get to the depth of the lineup a little bit. Meigs' Shelby Yost knocked in Brooklyn Roush with a go-ahead single in the 7th inning. Yost hits out of the 9-hole for the Marauders on the year. Just huge. The inning after, and this is where we talk about teams with youth and just how you react to when you face some adversity. The inning before, Reese Carr for Wellston, their 3-hole hitter shortstop, hit a 2-run homer to tie the game and could have, that puts the Marauders on the ropes. But they just reacted in such a positive way for the bottom of their order to bounce back and win the game for them offensively before Natalie Good's able to shut the door to help the Marauders to 17-1 on the season. Just an outstanding team with what they've been able to do.
Yeah, we heard on our interview there on SOSA from Bella and Brooklyn Roush, and they talked about how there was no panic. They had confidence in their group that even if they didn't come out swinging right from the start, that if they just would stay with it and they felt like someone would come up with a big hit and they end up being one run good enough.
Yeah, it's when you believe in each other, you have that confidence in your team. Obviously, you have Natalie Good in the circle. That's going to give you a lot of confidence as it is. But you believe that someone's going to step up. Someone's going to make the play. Okay, maybe I sacrificed to put a runner up because I know the player behind me is going to come up with a big hit. It doesn't matter, 1 through 9 in the order. And when your 9-hole comes up to maybe push you to a league championship, that just makes your entire my senior year we played on a team where we believed 1 through 9 was going to get the job done. That makes it so much fun. If you don't get the job done, the next player you believe is going to.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't do it. All right, next inning comes up, we're gonna, we're at a great spot in our lineup because any spot in the lineup is a great spot in the lineup.
Yeah. Well, and then on the other side too, Wellston will be just fine. That young lady in the circle pitched through some tough luck there, some defense maybe not their best night or whatnot. But then we obviously know some of the totals we've seen from Wellston throughout the year against some really good offenses. They're going to be a tough out in the tournament.
Yeah, Lila Pittinger in that game did not give up an earned run. They're 13-5 now. They beat a really good Piketon team, held them to only 3 runs in that. They're going to be just fine, as you said. But the only thing I'll say, she struck out 3 in the game, so a lot of balls put in play, and
Which
that's
means you got to play defense.
Yeah, so,
real quick on that too, because all my notes here from the offensive stuff, I talked about 5 different coaches. One of the things Coach Stauffer from Paint Valley talked about was with the numbers of participation going down, he's like, sometimes what you notice too, don't forget about the defensive aspect. He said you get more and more youth playing more and more defense. Well, if the strikeouts are going down and the balls are getting in play more, the defense becomes more of a premium. So I thought he made a really intelligent comment there in terms of, and we see that here impacting the TVC Ohio race even at the very top of the stand.
Yeah, and if defense wins championships and ultimately that can do so, especially in baseball, softball, because of all the different chances that you're getting now. Because if the pitching isn't as elite as it was, you're going to see a lot more balls put in play. So you got to have some range. You got to be able to run down and make the plays in the outfield. And that's one of the things that I think I've seen more of across. And this goes to the baseball side over at the VA, is seeing a lot of teams that can go get the ball now, as opposed to, in the past, then maybe that makes it to where the grounders aren't as well played, or maybe you're not seeing as many double plays turned, but you're seeing the ball falling a lot less in the outfield. I used to kind of jokingly tell my outfielders when they wouldn't sell out for a ball, is go, hey, if you catch that ball in the air, it counts as an out. Like, if you play it on a hop, we didn't get it out. But if you catch it, we only got to get 2 more of those things. So, but that's also why you got to back up bases, you got to back up positions, because if you're going to sell out for a ball, you don't get it, someone's got to make a play on it. So, should be outstanding to follow the rest of the TVC Ohio. It's a league that maybe doesn't have the depth that they've had at different times in the past, but you've got 3 nice teams on top, Vinton County in there as well. So you got 4 nice teams. Just overall, should be a fun league to follow throughout the rest of the year. But Meigs off to an outstanding 17-1 start. Let's go to a league that believes in the offensive side of the ball, and that would be the SVC. Piketon continues to stride towards that SVC championship. But what they've done in their non-conference, I've really liked. That's where they've got a couple of their losses. They've lost a couple games 4-3. But on Saturday, they were able to kind of tighten up on some things. They beat a really good Peebles team at home 3-1 in a game where they got 3 runs, which is kind of their MO in that non-conference, is the getting 3. But behind the pitching of Sadie Childers and Peyton Day, they're able to hold a really good Peebles team to only 1 run. You get the big hit from Aubrey Heath. She gets her 10th home run of the year. Surprise, surprise, after she hit 12 last year. And they get a really big non-conference win.
They do. I think it's a big win for their confidence down the stretch of the league race, but then maybe even more so into tournament, because you're eventually going to run into pitching. So again, the SVC pitching overall this year just isn't quite what it's been in some years up and down the teams, and the offense has really started to take over. A lot of home runs, balls just flying out of ballparks everywhere. So here they do get the home run from Heath, her 10th of the spring, but I think that one, in terms of the runs given up, in the 2 pitchers coming together and the defense doing a job, I think that goes a long way in giving them confidence on the type of game they're going to have to win somewhere along the lines if they're going to accomplish in the postseason what it is they hope to accomplish.
Yeah, they gave up 9 hits in the game, but overall, that means they were limiting errors. They weren't
not getting free bases, that type of thing.
No walks in the game, and that's the type of thing. So you can give up hits. You just have to limit any free bases. So that means you're cutting off the ball, you're hitting the cutoff person, you're not walking people, you're not hitting people, you're not just making silly mistakes, you're not throwing illegal pitches, you're not doing things to give those extra bases, and that's how you have to win those tight games in the tournament when you're facing pitchers that might slow down your big bats. I mean, Addie Blakeman has still been outstanding for them. She's got 8 home runs on the year. Jalen Forbes seems like she's really coming along offensively for them. I mean, Reese Shanks, Briar Penwell, Ava Reiser. This is just an offense. Kinley Maynard. This is an offense that can really play. You've got the freshman Adria Spradlin behind the dish. Sadie Childers can really hit the ball as well. This is an offense that is outstanding, but defensively, and that's one of the things that you see their page that they have on Facebook. And we see a lot of those things because we're local, but they celebrate when they make a big defensive play. So you know how much they're hammering on defense because they know that's going to be the make or break for them to get to another regional. Because right now it looks like they're going to win the SVC. They've got a couple tough games coming up in that, but they have the 2-game lead, so that's a great advantage for them. But they're able to, in that game against Southeastern the other day, they're up 7-5 going into the 7th. They score 11 runs. That's what their offense is able to do, even against a really elite pitcher like Williams. So that defense, you just have to keep being better and better each day.
Piketon's number one opponent, and now this sounds coach cliche, but it's going to be Piketon, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be the standard they set at this point with the 2-game cushion and the tournament out in front. You're getting ready to play in a bunch of games to finish off the gold ball run and some games early in your tournament run where you're going to be a heavy favorite. Well, the pressure is going to mount if you can't throw strikes and if you can't make routine plays. If that team does those two things, they're going to be really, really tough to beat shy of the Sweet 16.
Yes, I would agree with that completely. Now, let's stay in the SVC. Oh, my goodness, Jett is mashing the ball. Just absolutely crushing the ball. She is third right now in the state of Ohio with home runs, with 12 on the season. One more will tie the single-season record for Adina. Once again, shout out to the Adina Athletic Boosters page for kind of providing that one. But she hit 224 last year as a freshman, only 2 home runs. She's hitting 500 with 12 home runs as a sophomore. What you kind of said it off the air a little bit about the growth a player makes between their freshman and sophomore year.
Yeah, even on the girls' side where they mature quicker, you can see some young ladies come in their rookie season and make a big impact. But I still see a big growth from strength-wise and just experience-wise. Again, I think what's happened is I've done this offensive study throughout the week and talked to so many good softball people. Appreciate all the feedback. They've talked about, the equipment, they push the limits. The pitching's down. They do this. But they've started to play softball at a much younger age now. So what's happening is there's more of a depth to the lineup too. So I think what you're finding is in the Piketon lineups, don't forget in this Adina lineup that there's some other really good hitters like Hocking and Brown and Bossard and so forth all the way down. There's a long list of really good players.
Mallow's been really good. Yeah.
Really, really good hitters. So when you talk about a Symmes Valley lineup a second ago where 8 kids have hit 22 home runs and, you talk about that Chillicothe lineup that we were highlighting earlier with 5 kids in the top 15 of the FAC. Yeah, you may pitch around certain kids, but you're going to do so at a really high risk. Mm-hmm. It seems like before when the pitching was a lot better, the lineups might have had 1 or 2 of these kids. You could almost pitch around them or not make the mistake to them. Now, some of these top teams that we're covering week in, week out, as I study their team deeper, their lineup has incredible depth to it. So it's just, you pick your poison in certain spots, and if you're not careful, what could have been a solo shot, you turn out to make a 3-run shot that can get you beat in a hurry. That adds up in a hurry. But, we talked about this. We actually got word of this and announced it on the air the other night in that Chillicothe Peebles baseball game. The year that Jett's putting together is incredible.
Unbelievable. And that's – you mentioned the depth of their lineup, and that's why Wednesday's such a big game. A 21-19 game the first time they play, which is insane.
It's like Gus Backer, first to 15 win. Maybe they really could do that. Just say, hey, you hit and we'll hit, you hit, and the first one to 15 wins.
It's just been an outstanding season overall offensively in the SVC. But when you talk about that game, and this was something I looked up earlier, too, because I was trying to see how many home runs that Aubrey Heath had. When she was a freshman, she had 1. What did Jett have when she was a freshman? 2. They kind of are at a similar pace. Now, Heath had a little better average season as a freshman, but very similar tracking right now. So it wouldn't surprise me to see, Jett just continue this on. And remember, their big bats are all young players as well for Adina. So this is, with how young Piketon is, this is going to be probably game 2 of at least 4 of these kind of wild games between the 2 programs, and I'm really looking forward to following that one whenever it gets played, hopefully on Wednesday, but whenever it does get played.
But both of these teams have tried to do some things in the pitching, too, where they've used maybe a couple different arms, give a couple different looks. One coach talked to me a lot about you see a lot more off-speed stuff, but the command's not always there. So when you don't command it, it's obviously not coming in with the velocity that some people just overpower you with. More people can get the barrel to it. I've had fascinating conversations throughout. I'll just be anxious to see, do these coaches try to do some different things with their pitching to try to just – because – we're not talking about winning a game 1-0 here in all seriousness, but like you are trying not to give up 19.
Right.
You
Yeah.
assume not have to score 20 to win. So you're talking about, hey, could we do something to just limit someone down to like say 5 runs? You know what I mean? Like it's so I'll be anxious to see what do teams do in their pitching matchups or how they use multiple arms maybe just to try to throw the timing off a little bit.
Well, one thing that I think Adina's done well, which is kind of protect Jett as well, because they've got Mallow behind her hitting 439
Right.
with a 1200 OPS. So if you walk her,
Yeah.
well, even though Mallow's not hitting 12 home runs, she's got 2 home runs. She's still a very capable bat behind her. It wouldn't shock me to see Jett move up even more because, like, you don't ever, I would guess, you don't want her in front of Hocking because Hocking's going to get on base at, let me see, because I think it's a hilarious.
Malcolm was like leading the league in hitting at one point, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Like,
So it's just, man, these are 2 really dynamic teams, and that's what's going to make this a really fun matchup on Wednesday night. We're going to go one more league, and we're going to go over to the SHAC, and partially it's just because this is a late edition, changing the script up a little bit here, just because of kind of what I wanted to mention about what Peebles was able to do. Kaylin Musser was outstanding in that game. Only gives up 1 earned run in it. She's got a 1.57 ERA on the season. The senior hurler, 13-3 are the Indians now. They are kind of like in baseball where they've played 1 less league game. So they are sitting a half game behind Fairfield with Riley Quickle. Outstanding pitcher is there as well. Just overall, this league has some really good pitching depth at the top. They've got 6 teams that I would say very good softball teams.
Yeah, where in the baseball side, the graduations kind of hit them a little bit, and some teams have maybe come back to the pack a little bit. I think here you have some different programs that have really come on, and the pitcher in most cases is probably having a little bit more success in terms of run prevention in comparison to some of the other conferences, and that's probably what separates a little bit when you look at a North Adams throughout the year. They've given up, just 33 runs in 9 games, and that's a huge factor. So just something to follow down the stretch. I know Lynchburg has a good arm as well.
Noel Barnhill, they go 8 innings with Unioto. It was 3-3 after 7. So I mean, Unioto scores 3, I believe, were all unearned in that 8th inning, and that's because Barnhill's a more than capable pitcher. Carly Garrison and Marnie Toll, each for North Adams, have been outstanding. Garrison a 1.85 ERA, 2.02 for Toll. Toll's a freshman. The rest of these outstanding pitchers across the league are juniors or seniors.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
it's something to keep an eye on in the years to come for sure.
because you also got Addison Airy with Eastern. We mentioned Airy on the boys' side. Actually, that was at White Oak.
White Oak, yeah.
She's got a 2.07 ERA. Riley Quickle has a little higher ERA, but she struck out 109 on the season. Gives them a chance every night. Lydia Jordan for Fayetteville Perry's been really good. Eliana Applegate as well. We talked about her earlier in the season.
Applegate's having a big time year because
Yeah.
you throw in her offensive numbers too, and she's the update on here still has her hitting over 600.
Yeah, 6'11". Chloe Armstrong from North Adams, a freshman, has 9 home runs on the season, has knocked in 33 runs.
Yeah.
And that's a name to really keep an eye out, especially when you got Marnie Toll as a freshman for North Adams. North Adams was, a walk-off home run away from, extending with Piketon. That was an outstanding game earlier in the season. You've got some other big bats. You mentioned Applegate as well. She's got the 6 home runs.
The speed of Quickle offensively too, 19 stolen bases, 35 runs. I mean, that's one of those where, hey, I'm going to get on, I'm going to steal some bases and score some runs, and then I'm going to pitch. I mean, you're impacting the game in a major way in both the top and bottom half of the innings.
Yeah, and you mentioned, once again, going back to Applegate, she's got 14 steals. Adeline Hunter has 20 for them as well. So I mean, it's a league that maybe gets slept on a little bit in our area, but we saw them last year be really competitive over at Unioto in the Division 6 districts, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that again this year here in the next couple weeks.
No question.
So let's move on just to our big games of the week. So big games of the week, and it's going to be similar to the baseball side where we just kind of pick and choose some games, and maybe we talked about a few of them, like obviously the Monday night game at the VA Memorial Stadium, which we're hoping that you'll watch with us over on over here on the SOSA YouTube page. That'll be a 5 o'clock start. Probably go on about 4:50 on Monday, just to do a little bit of pregame, and we hope to see you out there. Go support them as well. If you're in the area, watch them live, and then watch us later on the YouTube, because it'll be there. But that should be an outstanding contest. Monday night, we've got Unioto at Southeastern. That one should be a really fun matchup there. You got a really good pitcher in Kylie Williams. Unioto is working with two newer pitchers. Kaylee Seaver and Macy Cox have done a really nice job of keeping them really competitive in a year where they didn't know they weren't going to have pitching. They've done a good job of keeping them. They're well over 500. North Adams at Lynchburg Clay. That'll be a really big one over in the SHAC. Liberty Union at Circleville. Liberty Union is on a complete other level, but Circleville really tough at home, and that's still a really good program no matter what their record is on the season. Bloom-Carroll at Logan Elm. It's a must-win for Bloom-Carroll to stay in the league race there. Logan Elm, an outstanding program. Once again, the 2 years free of going to the Final Four. And then you got Vinton County at Athens, a huge one over in the TVC, Ohio. Tuesday, this might be the biggest game of the week, and it's a non-conference game. You got Ironton at Wheelersburg. Several Division I players on display in that contest. Should be OVC champions against the SOC 3 champions. Should be outstanding. Then, of course, you got the rematch, Chillicothe at Jackson on Wednesday. Wellston at Athens on Wednesday as well. A couple of nice non-league matchups here on Thursday. You got Southeastern at West. This is a big week for Southeastern. Peebles at Clay. That'll be a really fun one to follow as well. And then a huge league matchup. You've got Southern at Eastern Reedsville. They love each other. This is, that one. I know Brock put that down as one of his possibilities. I think he should just go and he should just live stream it from his phone, put it on Facebook Live, just to see, because I'm sure the crowd's going to be super friendly in that one. Those programs love each other, and as we've said before, ain't nothing wrong with it, and should be an outstanding one. That one's going to be for a league title in the TVC Ohio, and then Friday you've got Southeastern at Adena, and then Cold Grove at Ironton. Cold Grove has had an outstanding season as well, so that'll be a really fun one.
I'm excited. Chillicothe Jackson, the two times in 3 days. We're lucky enough to get the VA game. What a stage for softball. What an opportunity for us here at SOSA just to be a part of it. We feel like we have some pretty good feel of the two teams, and we feel like we'll be able to tell you a lot about the kids throughout the game and try to give you a good call and a good look at it if you're unable to get to Chillicothe to see it.
Yeah, but if you're in the Chillicothe area and you're not at another game, come out to VA Memorial Stadium, see two outstanding programs, and then watch us later. Yeah. I mean, either way, watch it later. Yeah. But get out there, see it in person. Should be outstanding. So
looking forward to it.
Yeah. We got a lot going on this week. I think we're going to see a lot of our coverage ramped up. I know Raymond's looking to get to another track meet, as well as to a lot of baseball, softball coverage as well.
Not this week, but next you'll start to get into a lot of those conference meets.
Yes.
The track coverage will pick up.
Yep, and then we're seeing some lacrosse programs getting going, boys volleyball as well. Keep an eye out on all those different sports and support those kids. And as we always say, like, support the people that support us as well, because that means they're supporting the youth in the area. A lot of different people are doing some really good coverage around the area as well, so support those people as well. So, looking forward to, should be a beautiful week outside of probably Wednesday. Going to be a hot one tomorrow night at the VA, so looking forward to that and see you over there, probably at school as well. So
Absolutely. And everyone have safe and fun times at upcoming proms.
yes.
Yes.
And past proms. If you already
Yes.
went, make sure you're safe.
I want to make sure I got that in there to be fair and equal opportunity.
Yes, exactly. So you got anything else?
That'll do.
All right. That'll do is right. So for Shayne Combs, I'm John Bruce. You've been watching SOSA Overtime, presented by Perfection One. Have a great rest of your week.